Good evening, everyone. I am Zobia Charolia, and I welcome you to our inaugural Meet the Match 2024 session that falls under ZSAS. ZSAS is Ziauddin Student Alumni Society that ensures that past meets the present and futures are forged. As the president, I'm really honored, along with my team, to unite current students with our esteemed alumni. I look forward to your participation in our future events to ensure growth. Let's join us in shaping the future of Ziauddin. I would now request the moderators to take this forward from here on.
Hello everyone, I'm Gautam Dawani, a fourth-year MBBS student at Ziauddin University. I'm one of the moderators for today's session. I extend my congratulations to all the alumni who got matched, and we are eager to receive guidance from you.
Assalamualaikum, I'm Subeha Ali, and I'm thrilled to be one of the moderators.
Assalamualaikum everyone, I'm Ira Asim, and I'm really excited to be one of your hosts for this evening.
Today, we have a panel of esteemed Ziauddin alumni who have recently matched into US residencies, and they are here to share their insights and guidance on the USMLE pathway. Before we dive in, I'd like to extend a warm congratulations to all our panelists on their recent match into US residencies. Your dedication and commitment have brought you to this exciting point in your careers, and we are thrilled to have you all here to share your experiences with us. And we thank you for taking out the time to be here with us today. Can the panelists please introduce themselves?
All right, then. Hi, warm welcome to all of you. My name is Farheen. I'm from batch 20 MBBS. I graduated in December of 2019. I've had an interesting journey. I went to the UK, and now recently I matched. I changed my pathway completely. So luckily enough, I matched in internal medicine at University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, UPMC Mercy, internal med. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to share my experiences with you guys.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Ziauddin Zubia. I am a grad from batch 20 with Farheen. I graduated in December 2019, and I just matched into a preliminary general surgery position at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia.
Hi guys, I'll go next. So same batch as Amna and Farheen, 2019 graduate. I matched at Louisiana State University in internal medicine. My name's Rabil, by the way. And yeah, I taught some of you guys, so I recognize you guys. But yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Agustin. I matched into internal medicine also at Texas Health Resources in Plano. So nice to see you all.
Assalamualaikum everyone, and I am Masuma. I graduated in Feb 2021, and I matched at Louisiana State University in internal med, and I received a lot of guidance from our seniors throughout my journey. I'm looking forward to continuing it, and all the best. Thank you for having me.
Okay, hi, my name is Tuba. I'm a old grad of Ziauddin. Matched in internal medicine. I was in prelim before. So a lot to share. I matched in Mercy Catholic Medical Center. That was my primary choice. And hello everybody.
Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Mariam. I graduated in February of 2022. Afterward, I did a house job for 1 year, and then I applied for the match in family medicine, and I matched at St. Joseph Medical Center in Indiana. And yeah, thank you to the students for having us today.
All right, my name is Abdul Rafi. I'm also an old graduate of Ziauddin. I belong to batch 16. I graduated in December 2015. Yeah, so my journey has also ups and downs. Went from internal medicine to family medicine. Now I matched in pediatrics, so I have a lot to share in that regards as well. I went to the Canadian match process as well. So if anyone needs guidance in that as well, I will be able to help you. Other than that, it's a pleasure to meet all of you and hope to share some valuable insights. Thank you very much.
Hi, you guys. It's very nice to meet all of you. I am Preet Roshan, a graduate of 2022, sorry. Yes, batch of 2022. And I matched into internal medicine at the Wright Center, which is in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And yeah, looking forward to all your questions.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Alina Ishaq. I'm a graduate of February 2021. I matched into internal medicine at Garnet Health Medical Center in New York, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. Thank you so much for having me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Neha Kamran, and I just matched in child neurology, and I'm from batch 2021 as well. So if you, I'm here to answer all your questions regarding child neurology and even neurology, because I also applied to that. Yeah.
This is Dr. Romana. Hello, everyone. So I am also an old graduate. I'm batch 11. And before matching this cycle, I was practicing as an interventional cardiologist at NICVD. So I've gone through all the FCPS adult cardiology and interventional cardiology fellowship over here. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer for you.
Mariam Ahmed Sheikh and Dr. Zaid, can we start?
Yeah. Can we have the first slide, please? So we wanted to start by talking about the match timeline. I posted a little screenshot of the 2025 match, the important dates here. A lot of you will be applying this coming cycle, but a lot of you will be applying later. So roughly the dates stay the same. It's important to note that early June is when the ERA season begins, which means that's when you can make your account on the electronic residency application system. I think that's what it stands for. And that's when you can start uploading letters, personal statement, you start making your program list. And then September is when you start submitting, and end of September is when programs start reviewing your application. And the interviews go on from October, November, December, January is when programs start ranking, February is when we rank programs, and then March is when you find out. So it's important to know these dates to plan everything ahead. Ideally, your USMLE step 1, step 2, all of your electives with your letters, whatever research you want to do beforehand, as well as your OET, your pathway, everything should be done by September of the year you want to apply. Having said that, your step 2 score report can be uploaded later, certain letters can be uploaded later, but the safest thing and the wisest way to kind of plan it is to be done with everything in advance. I let Zaid and Preet talk a bit more, and we can just all kind of communicate this way.
I think this was a good introduction and framework for people looking to apply. I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but since we're talking about timeline and when to do what things, I think we might as well talk about it. I think the one decision people really need to make before they apply is figure out when they want to apply and what year they want to apply. Applying as early as you can is not necessarily the best thing to do for everyone. So when you look at the first bullet point on this slide, so getting your exams done, getting whatever US experience you need, and getting whatever research you need, that is going to take you time. And if you have to delay your application by a year to build your CV, that's fine. After step 1, what I've personally felt, I don't know about other people, is that it's gotten much more competitive and everyone has a decent step 2 score. So I would suggest that people look at these dates. They stay roughly the same every year. And if you can't get your application complete by September, then you don't have to apply that September. You can apply a year later. You can take time to get a better step 2 score, to get better clinical experience, to get better quality publications. I think that's something that's really going to help you all. And we'll touch on all of those things individually as we go through the presentation. But I think that's just something people should keep in mind.
Okay, I would like to add on to whatever Zaid said. Whatever he said, especially the bit of applying as early as possible is not recommended anymore. There's also what the doctors in the States recommend now. They're like, focus on completing your application, and completing your application has also changed meanings a bit. it's not just getting step one, getting step two, and like getting electives of in the States of like 2 months. That doesn't cut it anymore, because people who are applying from all across, and they're often residents, like 2 or 3 of the panelists right now. So they're just coming in with heavy guns. And so what all the seniors that I spoke to during my reaching out and networking time, everyone just recommended to get your step 3 out of the way. Because and some people also gave examples who applied twice, 2 years in a row. They said recent US clinical experience, and there's not just electives during your med school, it's US clinical experience after graduating within the months of your match application, holds all the weightage. And getting step 3 also just brings you, like, gives you an edge that would help getting interviews. So don't prioritize applying at your earliest. Prioritize applying smartly by getting US clinical experience in places that offer residency. And obviously we're gonna touch more on this later as we go, but it's just the rough timeline that I wanted to mention. Okay, go on.
I would also second what both of them said. When I was in Ziauddin talking to seniors, and when I was in like 3rd year, 4th year, everyone was always emphasizing, "Ke jaldi karo, just apply, just apply." And then when I went for my electives and I spoke to one of the program directors of the program where I ended up matching at, the first question he asked me when I told him my whole plan, he was just like, "Why are you rushing? Like, what's the rush?" And it's important that for you guys to know that in the US, they don't really emphasize you just being that quick. They really, experience matters, right? So whatever you do from the point you graduate until you apply, get more experience in, whether that's a house job in Pakistan, whether that's rotations in the US, whether that's like pre-set step 3 as well. Do those things and make sure that you are a worthy candidate, whether you are applying the year you graduate or like 3 years later, or even like 5 or 6 years later, whenever you apply. Make sure that whatever you're doing until that time is valuable experience, and that that actually matters. But having said all that, for those of you who are in 4th year, 5th year now, you guys are probably planning to take step 1 soon. Things are different for you guys than it was for us, because we have step 1 scores. And I know that a lot of you now, the trend has changed to just kind of take the exam when you are ready to pass it, which is fine. Although I would still recommend studying as much as you can for step 1, because that studying helps you a lot for step 2. And to not give a long gap between step 1 and step 2, because that knowledge that you have is really valuable for your next exam. Your US clinical experience, your main time you will get that is in your 5th year clinical, in your elective break, because that's when you can do hands-on clinical electives. After graduation, that changes a bit. You can do more observerships. It's still kind of possible to find hands-on experience, but it's a lot harder. And it's not necessarily even like a smooth process to do that. So plan your observerships as soon as possible. Even in 1st year, 2nd year, you can do them. But the main ones you will be doing are 5th year and then after graduation. So plan that way. Plan to take your step 1, step 2. Even if you can do it during med school, that's excellent. But obviously that's very difficult. Most people can't. Plan to do it soon after you graduate. Prioritize your exams early on. And then one more thing that I think we should talk about is pathways, which is basically what pathways are basically your clinical and communication skills requirement to get ECFMG certification, which you need by the time that you are ranking programs. OET is an English exam for doctors outside the US, which I think everyone has to take now in replacement of step 2 clinical skills. And then there's a number of pathways that you can honestly just Google pathways for US residency. The most common ones we apply through are pathway 1 and 2. Pathway 1 is where if you've done house job, you will get PMDC license, and you just submit that license, you take your OET, and through that you pay the fee and you get your pathway certification through that. That's what I did. Someone else can talk about pathway 2, because that's what most people do who have not done house job. But that's also something you need to do, I would say, by like June, July of the year that you're applying. So for those of you who are applying this year, definitely look into your OET and try to take it.
I would also like to add another thing. Before giving OET, because OET has a 2-year expiration date, give OET after you've given your step 2, at the very least, and give OET once you know for certain that you are going to be applying coming year. Because again, it is an expensive exam and it has an expiration date. And also, one more thing that I would like to add, this is not related to the pathway or OET, this is the US clinical experience. I would I would emphasize on getting on like aligning your US clinical experience, whatever form of US clinical experience this is, in the months leading up to the September of the year you're applying, because recent clinical experience holds more weightage, and that would also give you opportunity to like have recent networking, reaching out to doctors that would remember you also. And I know it is very difficult getting clinical experience, especially in places that offer residencies to IMGs. But like getting US clinical experience would be discussed later on how to approach, but like recent, again, like emphasizing getting recent clinical experience, for example, June onwards till September of your year. As opposed to wasting, I wouldn't call it wasting, but like spending money in getting clinical experience 2 years prior to your planned application year.
I think just to round this section off, the main takeaway is to focus on the quality of your application, even if that comes at the expense of more time. For your exams, step 2 is very competitive now, so aim for as high a score as you can. Make sure you give your step 3, because if you go for rotations anyway, there's no point in not giving it, and it does improve your chances in getting interviews. Try your hardest to get rotations in places where you can either network or where residency is already offered. It may take you longer to find those rotations, but that's fine. Don't consider time to be an issue. The same thing goes for publications. If you have to invest time to get better quality publications, then you should do that. And something that I wasn't aware of soon enough when I was applying is the way year of graduation works. The reason it's important is every program has a filter. So programs either will have a 3-year filter, a 5-year filter, or no filter, right? So if they have a 3-year filter, everyone who's graduated within the last 3 years is eligible, right? So they don't really care as much if you've graduated 1 or 2 or 3 years before. Same thing goes for 5 years. If you've graduated within the last 5 years, then everyone is eligible, right? Then they're going to look at what you did during those 5 years. So if you're able to justify the 2 or 3 year gap that you took after graduation with a good score, with good rotations and good work experience also, then I would suggest doing that. We haven't mentioned a postdoc or research position yet, but those things and working outside of medicine also count. So, that's how the year of graduation filter works. So if you're within the filter, even if you spend an extra year, then you don't have anything to worry about.
Yes, something small I'd like to add at this point is everyone's journey, everyone's timeline is unique. You don't need to do something just because everyone else from your batch is doing it. I did an elective in internal medicine during my final year in 2019 that had literally no bearing on my application right now. Just because everyone was doing it. And, the first time I heard of USMLE was literally in the 6 to 8 months prior to doing that elective, and I had no idea what my timeline is going to look like, but I went for it. I spent that money. I came to the US and did that elective, and I am just because literally everyone else from my batch was doing it. So just because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't mean you have to do it. Look at your own timeline, look at your own journey, and see how things will work out for you specifically, not what everyone else is recommending or doing.
There's also one thing. I was just listening to Amna. There's one more thing. Okay, so I see a lot of forums. There are a lot of Facebook groups. Don't want to take their names, but they go like, "Hey, what is the chances of me matching if I got this, and this score?" And how, like, it's just like prediction, right? But what I personally think is that every person's journey is the same, because if I would have evaluated myself, I would never thought that I would actually match, because don't take that for granted, or don't even take that seriously. Honestly, it is an advice, but then everybody's journey is different. And by asking questions, you actually do not know, because every program has its setting. It's better that you ask the program coordinator that is there like a filter involved? Is there no filter? Even like if you cannot reach them, leave a message, try to understand, and then apply smartly, because you're going to lose a lot of money in just applying if you're an old graduate. But don't go like asking people, because they actually do not know the chances of you matching. So the groups are, for me, these are like not very useful posts. I would not call them useless, but yeah, never predict your journey with others' opinion of you. That's what I would say.
I think that's a really, really important point. You know, everyone has their own journey, and figure out what you want and trust your own journey. Don't be influenced by other people doing different things, because then you'll never be able to focus yourself. There are people who are very old graduates who have even failed exams, who have managed to match. There are people who have gotten like 260s and not matched. So there's really no one way that everyone matches. It just, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So do your best and trust your own process.
With respect to giving your step one, so you guys talked about taking your own time and like focusing on your own path. Are there any like pros and cons to giving your step one earlier? Because some people say that they start preparing for it, say in second year, or they'll give it by their third year, or some people will choose they want to give it after they graduate in fifth year. So regarding giving the step one, is it better to give it as soon as possible, would you say, or would you say just take your time with it?
Obviously, the best thing for everyone to do is to do things as soon as possible, because step one content is what you study in first year, second year, third year. So the easiest thing would be to just buy your first year and start studying then. That's what I did. I was doing like my captains throughout first year, second year, third year. But I think the reason we're all emphasizing to take your time is because there's a lot of false information. There's a lot of pressure that goes around with all of the match process. So it's important to just keep your own timeline in mind and try to take step one early. But if you can't, that's okay. Try to take step two early, but if you can't, it's okay. Like, don't get pressure from other people. If you are in an early stage of med school right now, and you are able to take it during fourth year or fifth year, then there's nothing like it. Like I took it in fifth year, and that's the reason that I did a house job, because if I hadn't done it, then I would be focusing on something else, and then my timeline would have been different anyway. But then a lot of people also opt to take it after graduation, because I was able to do it because it was COVID time, so we had a lot of time off, so I managed it. But now you guys have full schedules every day, and it's a lot harder. So do what suits you, do what you can do, try to do it earlier. If you can't, it's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Eamon, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Gautam. I would just firstly like to congratulate all of you, and also thank you all for taking out time to guide us through this entire process, because it really means a lot, and we do need all the help that we can. With that, I actually have a couple of questions. Any one of you can answer it. The first question is that for people who did not do a house job, other than like preparing for step two and research projects, what other areas do you suggest focusing on to complete that gap in your CV? Or is there even a need to cover that gap, or just preparing for step two, focusing on research work is more than enough to justify that 1 year of house job that you're not doing? That's my first question. The second question is that how do you go about that particular pathway when you're not doing a house job? I believe that's called the second pathway. I'm not exactly sure. If someone could briefly describe that, that would be really helpful. Another question that I have is that Dr. Zaid mentioned that there's a 3-year filter for a program, for some programs. So for us, like for Ziauddin, all of the graduates, you all must know that even though we graduated in this year, 2024, our degree says class of 2023. So technically, someone who's applying for a match of 2026, that would be their last year to apply for programs that have a 3-year filter, right? And so that means that applying next year would be the last shot to apply for programs that have that particular filter. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, and I just wanted to clarify this out. And lastly, if someone is applying to a dual residency. So someone who wants to apply to surgery but wants to play safe as well and would like to apply to maybe, I'm not saying that internal medicine is not competitive. I'm just saying that surgery is statistically more competitive for IMGs to match into. So if someone wanted to apply into internal medicine and surgery, both in the same cycle, how would they go about it? If someone could please, like, if anyone could elaborate on all of these questions, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, Eamon. So I'd be happy to answer some of your questions because you asked quite a few. My name is Abira. Nice to meet you. So you said that your last question was about applying to a competitive specialty and then having a backup. So that's something I did. I applied to OB and matching was a priority to me. I didn't want to go unmatched. So I also applied to family medicine. I applied to a few family medicine programs. Majority were still OB because that was my top priority. The thing is, when you're applying to a competitive specialty, your CV should be geared towards that specialty. And I feel like specialties like family medicine, they're kind of aware that a lot of people are using them as a backup. So I would say that if you do want to apply to two, you should have enough, like a little bit of experience in both. Like you can't just be applying for internal medicine and only have surgery electives or only have experience in surgery because they can see that they're not stupid either. So the way I did it, so I had different LORs for my family medicine programs. I had a different person statement. It was a little bit similar, like it wasn't completely different, but I did change it up a little bit. LORs were different. I had some clinical experience in family medicine as well. A lot of volunteer stuff comes into family medicine. That's community health. So you can use that to your advantage. Definitely have separate LORs. Like you cannot be using your surgery LORs for family medicine or internal medicine. Keep that in mind. Another thing you asked about using a different pathway if you haven't done your house job. So I hadn't done my house job. So I did pathway 6. The way that works is, I think it was called a mini clinical exam or something. So you needed 3 doctors to conduct this clinical exam for you. They did not have to be US doctors. They could be any doctors who have been practicing medicine unsupervised. So you could literally go to like any doctor in Ziauddin, anywhere in Pakistan, whatever. They just had to fill out this form. You take a history, you do a clinical exam, and you give your management plan for 2 patients, and then the doctor fills out that form. It's all through the ECFMG website. They've explained everything really well on the website. It's not difficult to do. It's just a little time consuming because you have to go in person to find to these doctors and do the actual exam. But it didn't take that much time. I actually did it in Pakistan and in the US. So I did it because I was visiting Pakistan last year. So I did it with 2 doctors here, and the other one I did in the US, and they were both fine. Like it wasn't an issue. It didn't take too much time. It was approved easily. It wasn't a big deal at all. I don't remember your other questions, but if you can remind me, maybe I can answer some of them.
My other question was about the 3-year filter. So if you're applying for a 2026 match, would it be true that that's a last shot to apply for programs that do have a 3-year filter? And just to like have a clarification about the question that you just answered, that's pathway 6. There's also an alternative pathway which you don't have to go to doctors, right? And that is if you are a recent graduate under 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think that one was for recent grads and I didn't meet that criteria. So that's the one I did for pathway. That's why I did pathway 6. I didn't do pathway 2. Maybe someone else can talk about that one.
Okay, thank you so much. Just one last question. Did you also do your clinical lectures in the US for family medicine because you were applying there as well?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you so much.
Suma, you're up.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum everyone, and as you all know that the CV is really important. Speaking from my personal experience and all the other applicants also, is that by the time you're writing your CV, I assume that you are done with the hard work part of the process, and this process requires, I guess, around 70 to 80% of hard work, and the rest is how smartly you work. So that is equally, if not more important. So by the time you're writing your CV, now this is the point to present yourself in the best way possible before actually presenting yourself, like your presentation on paper. And this is very important because some of the you have to understand the process. It's like, it's matching. So not every applicant is the same. Not every applicant has the same journey. Neither it has to be the same. It doesn't mean one is stronger or weaker than the other. And keep one thing also in mind, that not every program is the same. Not every program prioritizes everything equally. Some prefer year of graduations, some research, US clinical experiences, maybe scores. Some are more dominant on scores than the rest. So like someone said, we see profiles on different websites would say that what are my chances my step 1, 2 score, and it's not as simple as that. So if someone has a low score, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are at a disadvantage, provided that they worked on the other aspect and also how they presented themselves in the CV. This CV not only helps you in your application as such, but also when you're networking and reaching out to people. So this is exactly how you introduce yourself. So there are a couple of things. At our time, this format had changed significantly. The one prior to our time, they had specific sections for USC, hobbies, research. In ours, they just gave us to list down 10 experiences. We could have combined a couple of them. It was all up to us, and we were asked to select top 3 that we prioritize and that we want to signify as the most significant experiences. So how I went about it, I'll first share my approach to it, my thought process to it, because when I showed it to the mentors, there were very few changes that they made, and most of them appreciated my approach to it. And I'll also tell you what feedback generally I received. So first of all, I don't know how the process will be this year, but I mean, you need to know how, you already know what work you've done and how to present yourself. But the approach has to be the same to make it as presentable, as attractive. And, so first you have to write down every single thing that you did from med school till the end of the time or during your match process. So that significantly, broadly speaking, includes your USC. For USC, like I think pointed out that the recent USC is very important. But having said that, I would like to add a personal experience and one thing to keep in mind, that every aspect of this application has its pros and cons. So you have to see what suits you the best. As far as recent USC is concerned, it makes you help connections and so on. But mostly, technically speaking, electives is when you get your hands on. And a lot of program directors do lay a lot of emphasis if it's hands-on observerships. So if it's hands-on or observerships, and technically you can do electives hands-on earlier in your med school. So provided the way you present it on paper, that is very important. Like you have to, first of all, see what matters to you, what you can talk about, what actually impacted your personal experience in this journey, and also what a program director would want from you. So this is actually, you have to sit down and match and then make the list. So because you can't only tailor yourself for a specific program. What if the other programs don't appreciate that specific thing as much as you do? And when they actually question you, you're interviewed on the stuff that you write on your CV, and you're not able to back it up with your personal experiences, because personally speaking, you don't have much to talk about. That's a red flag. And again, if you just speak about what it was personally close to you, and it doesn't really add to the skills that you bring to the program, that's also it reduces its strength. So about so it's USC. It can have your research experiences. It can have your volunteering experiences, provided again how you make it appear. And it can have your hobbies. About hobbies, since we didn't have a separate section in our format, a few people added to make it as to add variety to the application. Well, I was told to remove it because I had a lot of other experiences, and my mentor said that it's kind of lowering the value of your CV because you have other more important stuff to talk about. But having said that, every applicant is different, every journey is very different. You have to see if that significant hobby makes you stand out. Go ahead and mention it. And make sure that you don't go for just filling up the CV. If you can make it as concise, as to the point, if you can combine a couple of US CVs together and you can talk about other stuff, make it more quality based rather than quantity based, right? You have to remove all the fluff. You have to make it as crisp, to the point, and make sure that every word that you write, it adds value to your CV rather than just filling it up. So, yeah. And what else? This is generally about CV. Of course, I can't comment more on it because it differs from person to person and their specific journeys. But one approach that you have to have is, again, make it crisp, to the point. Don't just do it for the sake of filling it up. Make sure all the points that you've done are covered, all the experiences. They are presented in the way that you can talk about them, and also what matters to the program. For example, if you're talking about USC, if it's hands-on, mention it. If you got the chance to use EMR, mention it. It holds a lot of importance. If you presented, participated in academic sessions, very important. The duration you had, if you learned something else. If you're talking about research, what role did you play? What did you learn from it? Any leadership positions that you had, specific skills that you had. If volunteering or you were a core member of a society, mention it. What were your responsibilities? This is very important. And having said that, remove the personal aspect of it. That has to be mentioned in your personal statement separately. This is more factual, and the stuff you did. It might have had a positive impact on your personality. You can have an experience you learned, and then you learned other leadership skills, or it groomed your personality, added to your confidence, etc. That can be mentioned in your personal statement as to what you did had an impact on your personal life. But this has to be more factual, skill-based, and more matching, as in what mattered to you and also what programs are looking for. Okay, so we spoke. This is what I mentioned, right? Right, because like not all programs value house job or internships, but if you did, that's a very good clinical experience. If you mention it properly, that's fine. One personal experience that I have of something not as significant, but being presented as a strong point in your CV is that by the time I was applying for electives, it was COVID. So unfortunately, we had very limited options, and not many places were offering electives, and I hadn't taken step one back then, so couldn't apply to even the limited ones that we had. So I ended up rotating at a very expensive hospital. I wasn't like the best of the experience. It was fine at the end of the day. I had a lot of hands-on and learning experiences. The patient population was Spanish-based, so that was the language barrier. I mentioned it as learning one of the skills that is communicating with a population that's predominantly a different language. And I learned the skill, a user translator, and it was my first experience in the US, and the rapport that I formed with the patients. To my surprise, it was one of the most frequently asked questions in my interviews. Luckily, one of my interviewers, I had done a research, she was Spanish and Spanish speaking background. So this is the thing we connected on. So like someone said, it's not right or wrong. The CV is where you present it. I was expecting questions on other USCs, which were done at bigger programs, but this is where it struck out to them, that this is how you adjust to a different patient population. So this is just an example of how you present in your paper and what the significance that it holds. While moving on to the, what do we have? The type of experiences. Yeah, so the type of experiences, like I said, it's USC, it's research. Again, this is mine, but there are people, as we know, who went to UK, Canadian, or other pathways. That makes you a unique applicant. So it's up to you how you present it. So that is, again, research. Like I said, even if it's virtual, if you learned leadership communication skills, do mention it, because you're frequently asked in interviews about your leadership and teamwork. That's one of the strengths that a resident has to have. So that I mentioned a couple of volunteering experiences also. I had them. So if you have them, don't think there are any less value. That's very important. Again, the way you presented, what you learned, and the skills that you had, and the duration. Geographical preferences. There was a very commonly asked question. So there are two ways to go about it, not completely right or wrong, but I'll tell you the pros and cons of both of it, and you decide for yourself, because either have been successful for applicants. So geographical preferences, we had different areas. They had divided it into different areas, and one being areas with more IMG friendly programs. So what people did is they selected the IMG friendly, and they said that they received interviews mainly from the places that they put as geographical preferences, and according to them, that helped them a lot, which can be true. I was doing the same, but I ended up not having a geographical experience and preference, and I ended up getting interviews from a couple of different areas. And the reason that I changed my mind and did not have a preference is because one of the mentors told me that, say, for example, if a program which is not in my geographical preference, because they have, very different areas also, and if they see me as a potential candidate and they see that I have not added them as a geographical preference, they might select someone else who has. So that might make me lose my chance. So I didn't put a geographical preference. So I think it gives you a significant importance in places where you do put them as a preference, but it might also lose your chance for the program which you've not listed as. So this you have to choose. For me, not putting a geographical preference didn't harm me as such, because I did get a quite of interviews from different areas, but it did help them, the ones who did put. So that is my personal experience, and the two things that you have to think about. If you don't think you have a chance in areas which are not mentioned, example, Mississippi, or, not very IMG friendly places, then if you think it's wise to concentrate on the ones where you have more contacts, chances in matching, go ahead. It might add an edge to it. Signaling, again, very important. And I've heard that we had seven signals, and the new one, I think there are 3 golden, I don't know, 12 silver, I don't know what that means. But first, signaling is, Alhamdulillah, I received a couple of interviews from my signaling. So I think I can talk about that. So signaling, there are a couple of things that you have to take care of. So this is where the actual mindset of matching comes into play. You have to look at the programs that match, one, your credentials, your CV, right? You can't say, okay, this program is a small community program, I will end up getting an interview if I signal it. That's not true. They don't see you as a match. And same goes for very top tier ones. So you have to see where your CV aligns with the match requirements. It is a match. It's not a good program, good candidate, bad program. It's a match. So both have to be ranked high. So signaling, one, you have to see where you meet the criteria. Then another thing comes into play, it's very important. How many people have been receiving interviews from signaling from that area? I have noticed, but some programs prefer certain universities, med schools over others. The other med schools might be getting interviews if the applicants from that med school have signaled them, but the rest might not. So this is very important. If people from your med school, if they receive the interview by signaling, so you have to have, and I would appreciate if we have a data of that, because I know another med school that have it, they write the number of the programs that applicants signaled and the interviews people ended up getting from that signals, because this is very Ziauddin specific for some programs, unfortunately, but some programs are specific in that way. So don't waste your signals. Signals can do a lot of, they can have a very important part in your matching. So one, you have to see if your med school applicants have received through signaling, if your application is compatible. Another thing that helps is if the program is very much into signaling. Again, there are two things to think into this. There are a number of programs that prefer signals more than the others, right? Not every program is so strong on signaling. Like, I don't know, Jacobi is strong. They consider West Virginia, what is it, Dearborn? What was it called? The one in Michigan. Well, there is a program. You can find a list of them. So there are a number of programs that Albany, there are certain programs that prefer signal candidates more than the others. So UAB Montgomery. So if you have signaled them, they will see you, and if you haven't signaled, they might not look at you. Having said that, signaling doesn't guarantee an interview. Why? Because again, they're receiving a lot of signals. So it also gives you an edge if you have someone in the program vouching for you. So that can make you, so if you have someone, connections, contacts, vouching, prefer those programs. That signal can help you. Because I was of the I was considering if should I signal the one where I have someone watching for me. Will that add to it, or is it wasting? Because I might get an interview from there anyway. So why waste my signal there? I might signal some program that I don't have anyone. Well, even contacts don't work as simply as that. We'll talk about it later. So yeah, so if you have someone, that again gives you an edge. If you signal a program where you have someone, you already have stepped into that. This is important. And programs, don't only signal the very high profile programs ki chalo signal kar diya, interview aa jayega. Again, that's not a match, and not very small ones. You can be a little ambitious, and like if we had 7 out of 2, you can go for a slightly really good top tier programs to aim high, and a bit lower also, but mainly the ones compatible with your profile. This is very important because you sometimes don't end up getting interviews only from the small community programs. Yeah, so this is what helped me. I think if I remember more, I can of course add, and if you have questions, you can ask by the end of the presentation. I'll also leave my email address in the chat, so if you have questions throughout the process, I'll be happy to help you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Masoom.
This statement, it's one of the trickiest components, and it's highly recommended to start early because this is something medical students aren't good at. We're not good at writing essays. But one important thing is start early, write a couple of drafts. I would say there's no one right idea in the start. You might have a few ideas, you might have 0 ideas. A lot of people recommended that I should not look at any don't look at any formats or any examples before I start mine, but I had no idea what a personal statement was. So I went online, I saw a couple of personal statements. I messaged my seniors, I asked them if they could send me theirs, if they were comfortable sharing their personal statements. I went over them, but it's very important that you do not copy any of it. Your personal statement has to be very you. Most of my interviews, they talked about my personal statement, and it was most of my interviews was about that topic only that I mentioned in my personal statement. And it can really help you during the interview. I don't know if it helps you get an interview, but it definitely helps you talk during the interview, and it helps them know you as a person more. So it's very important that you write about yourself, even if it's not some amazing story. It can be something very basic, but it has to be very unique to you. And another thing is, don't just go for a sad story because everyone writes one, or don't go for like a fun thing because everyone writes it. You have to go for something that you have gone through, or if you don't want to talk about that, if that's something that defines your personality and that matches it to medicine. So you can talk about something, and then you have to link it to why you chose this specialty, whether that's surgery, whether that's medicine, whether that's pediatrics. It has to link to your, you have to find a link. And if you're confused as how to find a link, I would just recommend just start writing a few drafts and then going over them, getting a link if you can make one, and then having it reviewed by people consistently throughout the months. I would recommend you to start as early as possible, but at least by June, July. And then you will keep editing it till the end of your application. I'd like to ask Mariam to add more. I'll add more if I remember more stuff.
So I agree with everything you said. And just to add to that, your personal statement is very important. A lot of people will say it's not the most important thing. Obviously, scores are important, LORs are important, everything is, but anything that you are sending to a program is taken into consideration. So make sure that everything you send is your best. What I think something important to point out, and something that I struggled with a lot, is to find what makes you unique. Because a lot of people have had certain experiences, like a sick family member or a sick, something that they've been through themselves that is different, that like really did influence them. But I think majority of us kind of just, are not that special, we believe. That's what I was thinking when I was writing. I was like, there's nothing that makes me unique. But we all have our own journeys, and there's always something in there. So it takes a lot of thought to find that thing. Okay, another important thing to mention for a personal statement is don't repeat your CV. Your experiences, like your USC, your research, all that is in your CV. So don't be telling them that again. Don't say that I started my journey with this elective, then I went to this research, and then that's what shaped me. don't repeat that. That's not adding anything. Talk about what you went through, how you felt when you did certain things, and how those impacted you. And then based on whatever specialty you're applying for, talk about why that specialty is what you are doing, what makes you a suitable candidate for that specialty. And don't even talk about why you're leaving Pakistan, going to the US, developing country, you want a better future. Everyone has that same story. So there's no point talking about that. Talk about the specialty, talk about your own journey. And another important thing is keep it short, because when you upload it onto ERAS, it doesn't come in a continuous scroll. It's like one page, and a person who's reading it has to flip to the other page. And when you have, a program that's reading hundreds of person statements every day, they don't want to read something longer. They'll see something that's just 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, and then they'll say, that's concise, I can read this. If it's longer than that, they're not going to want to read it. And also, because they're reading so many, they're not going to be reading each and every single one full detailed. They're going to just be skimming through them all. So make sure that your first line or your first paragraph is really interesting, that hooks you in. And that is something that they can remember. And that's something that they will also very commonly talk about in your interviews if it stood out to them. So the personal statement will not necessarily make or break your application, but it can really, really help you stand out more.
Adding on what Mariam said, sorry, Amna, do you want to go ahead?
No, you go ahead, Rabbi, first.
So just adding on to what she said about the first paragraph being very important, it's the hook. Most of the PDs don't have time. They don't have time to read the entire essay long. They just want to read your first para or the last para. Or if you have something important to tell in the middle also, it's your first para that will get them in and have them read the rest of it. So talk about something different, talk about something unique. Like we said, this doesn't have to be something amazing like you started a hospital or anything. It has to be something just very different and something that is like, oh, this girl does this or this person does this. So just make sure your first para is something different. As an example, in my personal statement, I really wanted to talk about a sick family member, and everyone told me that that's been done and dusted. So that's something I mentioned in the middle of my personal statement because it was still me and I still wanted to talk about it. But my first para, I mentioned something fun. I mentioned how I liked skipping rope and I just linked that. And that's not something that's, something that would make me stand out as a medical professional, but it was just something different and they liked that, and it made them read the rest of my personal statement and talk about the other aspects of it too. So just make sure you have something different.
I just want to add one thing in regard to personal statements. I was actually talking to a program director, and he himself said that I actually prefer the personal statements which are imperfect. They don't want perfect this and it sounds amazing. Like we didn't do literature. Like we're doctors, right? So he's like, we can 100% tell when somebody's used a service or used AI. And he's like, I actually prefer personal statements which are more genuine, which are actually written by the applicant and which actually show me who this person is, as opposed to something that just sounds perfect and perfect grammar and everything is just amazing. They can see through it as well. They've been doing it for many years. So just be careful when you're using AI and all of these services and all of those things.
Okay, thank you guys. So let's move on to the LORs, Dr. Noor and Dr. Saida.
Farheen here. So yeah, I would say that LORs are super important. I think one of the most important things in your application, because these are professionals that are writing about your qualities that they observed while they were working with you. And that's what people that I connected with during my rotations told me. They said, you know what, I don't even read the personal statement. I don't really care what's written there. Like I'll graze over it. If there's a red flag, there's a red flag. What we prefer the most, especially good programs, they look at LORs and they look at your research and your body of work. So when it comes to LORs, we really want the best one. So essentially you get 4. I don't know if that's going to change the cycle, but it's 4. One is normally from Ziauddin. I think the Dean of Medicine gives you that one. And there are 3 LORs that you can give. Essentially, people try to get the most LORs from US clinical experiences. And that's a good idea because the US physicians, when they're reviewing your application, they like to know that, okay, there's someone there who's vouching for you. And normally the person who's giving you the LOR will probably email that program as well, or be your mentor or something, and they really trust, a US physician. However, I will digress that if you work solidly with a Pakistani mentor, that's also amazing. If they can write something very personal, the experience, the long-term experience you've had with them, they can give so much insight into the person you are, your work ethic, I mean, everything. So it really boils down to who you worked with the in the most close proximity with, and who can write the best version for you. So for me, it was a mix. So I applied to university programs as well. I got into one, but essentially my mentor was also my professor from the UK, because I was working in Queen Mary, and he talked about my work ethic, how I was like in my research, but he also talked about, key close experiences that he had with me, what was about me that he really liked. So essentially they should be telling an experience about you that gives, insight into your character, how you work, what's your personality like. So I had one from the UK, and then I had two US physicians write one for me. So my US physicians were essentially the ones that I was doing an observership with, because in my time, I couldn't get a visa. I was rejected several times. I didn't do my electives. So observerships were where it was at. I went to Pittsburgh. I worked with people closely, and essentially we had loads of interesting experiences, and that's where I think you can really shine in your rotations. So make sure you're like super active, you know what you're doing, and you will have certain moments where you'll really shine and the doctor will really remember you. Like in my case, I pointed out something in a patient's management, and I said, like, person had short gut, and they were giving him omeprazole or something, and I said, the mode of omeprazole could be crush it, just giving ideas to them, and they really like someone who can talk or give ideas or is very like helpful in the management. Even if you're an observer, it doesn't matter. And they probably wrote about that. I never saw my LORs, but I'm guessing they were good, because when I was in my interviews, they always like said, oh, we've heard that you did this in your rotations, and we were quite impressed with that. So you can talk about them a lot. So essentially, going into the process, you need to work with someone closely for them to give you a good solid LOR. If you ask just anyone, in your 2-week rotation, you ask someone, hey, give me an LOR, they're not going to do it. Make sure you work with that person closely. Then you can sort of bring it up like, this is my journey. I would really appreciate if there's something that you liked about my work, something, if you want to help me progress, I would really love a letter of recommendation from you for my application. You can just broach the subject while you're working with them. And most of them comply. They want to help you. They want to see you succeed. So someone you trust, someone you've had a solid time with. I had like maybe 2 months with those people each. So they were pretty happy with endorsing me. And essentially, you get the LOR. It's normally waived, and that's the most valuable LOR. You don't want to see that LOR. Some people essentially get it on the down low, like they ask them to send it and then email it to them. That happens too. You can do that. It's fine. But yeah, so they upload it on your behalf. Make sure that you are letting them know well in advance of your cycle, because I've heard that sometimes physicians forget you, and especially when you've left the rotation, or they forget, and you need to send them reminders and stuff, and then it doesn't get uploaded on time. I've heard that. So make sure you bring the subject up like well in advance, plan everything accordingly, and then upload like at least 4 weeks before, so you're good. So yeah, that's about it, and it's waived. You upload them, and I think one you upload for the Dean of Medicine uploads one. Third one's your choice, be it US, be it Pakistani. I like to include everyone who worked with me. So essentially, yeah, that's it. That's the summary of all of this.
Hi. So I had a few things I wanted to like contribute to. 2-3 things are like for LORs. Sometimes that happened with me was in the US physician's office usually was like, you make your own LOR and I'll sign it. That has happened to a couple of people that I know as well. So when you are drafting that LOR, make sure you actually include, if you have done any researches, as the previous speaker previously mentioned, and then make sure it's interesting enough and it doesn't look copy pasted from any drafts or from any website. It's better if they write their own LORs because they can explain more. They have an experience. But if the time comes that you have to make sure that you have to draft, do it in such a way that it's very personalized to you. Second thing is sometimes we kind of use LORs, like family medicine and internal medicine, they're interchangeable, but then it's not supposed to be looking the same. Family medicine is more like internal medicine is more focused on one thing. Family medicine deals with everything. So make sure that LOR is kind of different, even if it's the same person. Third thing is I've been through that, seen a lot of people, they chase for electives, observership, externship, whatever you may call it. And they push the attending or the hospitalist or anyone they're working with, any specialization, to such an extent that they start avoiding. So don't make sure, even if somebody is from our program, it happened with me, that as soon as they start getting matched, they go like, hey, can we get a LOR from your attending? Can we get an elective? Can we okay? So I was like, to one person, I was like, I didn't even start. I mean, I have, but in a way I will start. So make sure whoever's matched, be respectful of their time as well. It's not that I'm just giving you like a very proud remark, but it's like, if somebody has matched, don't push them like, hey, can I get an elective in your program? Just give them some time, do your own homework, because every one of us have done our homework as well. So give them some time, just be nice, courteous. But some people, they become very pushy. Like, they go like, hey, you just matched in the program. Can you just get us an elective? Can you just do this? Okay, once, twice. And then it becomes, to be honest, annoying at times, especially for people who started it. So just make sure you keep yourself in our position, and realize that we are also starting in the beginning, and if for LOR, just be respectful for anyone, like if it's us or if it's the attending or if it's the hospitalist or anyone you're going to be working with. And third thing is the LORs which you never really worked with, that also be careful. There are few of the physicians that in the US they give free LORs, or they just pay and then you get LORs. The program director does know about them. It's better if you can work with somebody that is not like kind of blacklisted. So be careful of that as well. I know it's costing money. Initially, when I was doing my house job, I wanted to go, but it was so expensive, like 4,000 or 5,000. I was like, should I go there for a 1 month of LOR? And then, I was like self-supporting and stuff. So just work on it. I know it's financially draining, but just find a way that you can not be getting an LOR, which will not affect you in the future. Second, ask your seniors for help, but then don't be pushy, because they also are very limited in their resources. That's what I would like to say.
Moving on, Dr. Abira, you're on.
So hi everyone again, and I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to see how everyone in Ziauddin right now is so aware. Like, I really like the fact that you guys are asking all the right questions. I feel like I did not know as much as you guys do, so I love that for you. And if you guys have taken your exams in Ziauddin, congratulations. I'm really glad that experiences. So I'll just be talking about what worked for me. It may not work for you, but I'll just tell you about what worked for me. So program list. Since I was applying to OB, which is considered a competitive specialty, I tried my best to reach out to other IMGs who had matched in OB. There were not a lot. It's not IMG friendly at all. There were pretty much none from the last 10 years in Pakistan, at least. So I was reaching out to non-Pakistani IMGs. Everyone was really nice. I think when you're deciding where you should be applying, you need to keep in mind that since you are an IMG and if you're visa requiring, like, you need to be realistic about your chances. You will not be matching at a university program. So keep that in mind. You have to be very, very smart and strategic about the programs that you're applying to. Like, you're going to be visa requiring. So you have that restriction already. You can only apply to programs that are sponsoring visas. So you're already limited in that way. So the other thing, like I said, I reached out to a lot of non-Pakistani IMGs. So I would ask them, I was like, which programs actually offered you interviews? Because then those are the programs that have the ability to take an IMG, because the ones you're offering an interview, that means that they can sponsor your visa, they're willing to take you. So keep that in mind. Like, if you're reaching out to people right now, always ask them where they got their interviews from. Even if they don't want to share like their number of interviews, whatever, just ask them the names of the programs if they're comfortable sharing that. And so I would search like on, the same websites, Residency Explorer. There's a website called Residency Program List. I didn't use Frida that much. I don't think that was very helpful. But other than that, I just I was realistic about my chances. I didn't say, okay, oh, I want to match at like a university program. Like I was doing research at the University of Michigan. And after I went there, I realized that they ranked number 3 for OBGYN across the nation. So I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to get in here. And the program director also told me that. Like the first thing I did when I started my research position, I went and met the program director because I was like, I need to let him know that I'm here and I'm doing this research. I'm not just going to sit here quietly and just do my research, because that's not the point. Like the end goal for me is not to do research, it's to match. So I let him know. I was like, I'm an IMG, I'm visa requiring, and I'm here and I'm going to be here for this period of time, but at the end of the day I want to match. So he was like, that's great, and that you have like, these are the good things in your application, these are the things you can work on, but I'm also going to be realistic. We're probably not going to take you because we have not taken an IMG in the last 50 years. So I was like, okay, that's fine, at least I know from the get-go. And then he's like, okay, so but these are the programs that you should be targeting. And I was targeting those programs way in advance. Like I didn't decide like 3 months before, okay, acha, these are the programs that are probably going to give me an interview. No, it was like as soon as I went there, like a year before application started. So the way that works is like, you can obviously like look up programs, look at their websites, everything. Go look at the residents who are there right now, see if there's any IMGs there, see if there's any like US IMGs, non-US IMGs, like all of those things. Because I feel like Residency Explorer can be inaccurate for like to a certain extent as well. Like they might say, oh, like 50% are IMGs, but when you go on their website, that's not the case because they haven't updated the website in a long time, updated Residency Explorer in a long time. So I think the program's website is your best bet. Yeah, I think that's about it for programs list. Like you just have to be very smart about the programs that you're targeting. Another thing, so OB has like tiers of signals. So there's gold signals and there's silver signals. So I had 3 gold signals, and I was very smart about the programs I gave my gold signals to. I didn't give it to any university program. I gave it to programs where I knew I could realistically get an interview, and alhamdulillah, I got 3 out of 3 interviews from those signals. And everyone I told this story to, they're like, yeah, you're smart about the interviews. Like I didn't signal like Yale or something randomly because I knew that I wouldn't get an interview from there and I'd just waste my signal. So if you signal a community program that actually would take you because they have taken IMGs in the past, it'll be like, okay, like this is a good bet. Like this candidate, we can actually take her and she's so interested in our program. So I think that's something very important. You choose your signals wisely.
Just to add on to this, I think both of you are pretty much spot on. It's really important to make your own list for 2 reasons. One, everyone has a very specific criteria. Like Amna mentioned about programs in a 30-minute radius. So have some time for that. Start as early as you can. Use Residency Explorer, go onto their websites, and don't be shy about communicating with programs. Email the program coordinator, ask them whatever question you want that's not already on their website, right? That's also a good way to reach out to programs early so the PC knows that you're interested. The other reason that's really useful is that you know individually then each program that you've applied to. So you also will have an idea about their criteria and how good of a match you are for that program. If you don't have time, this is not something you're going to be able to do. But I would really recommend that you all make your own list. It will take a while because if you apply to 100, 150 programs, it's not easy. But going through each of them individually will give you a better edge. So you should definitely do that.
Moving on, Dr. Abira and Dr. Masuma, networking and mentorship.
Yeah. So, okay, so, networking, this is, I feel like, a trigger for a lot of people. You hear this a lot, like everyone's like, oh, this cycle, only connections work. And, sitting in Pakistan, it's so easy to say that. Like, सिर्फ connection से ही होता है, interviews तो connection से ही आते हैं. But the kind of connections matters. Like, it's not going to be like your Khala's friend's daughter sitting in the US, and while you're sitting in Pakistan, who's going to vouch for you? Like, you're not going to get an interview that way. The connections that actually matter are the people that you have worked with, because at the end of the day, the people who vouch for you, who stick their neck out for you, are people who believe in you, and they'll only believe in you once you have worked with them, once they've seen you, once they've seen your work ethic, your determination, your passion. That's the only, because their reputation is also on the line. Like, if they are vouching for you, and you're not a good candidate, it'll come back to them. So they're not going to risk anything for a random stranger, right? So I think it's really important to build your connections, to network, and actually have organic connections. So the way I did it was, like I said, I was doing a research year at U of M. So as soon as I got there, my PI was a PhD. She was not an MD. So she didn't know anything about the match process. And when I got my step 2 score, I told her what it was. And she was like, oh, so what does that mean? Like, she had no idea about anything. So I knew that I was kind of on my own and I have to do this by myself. So the first thing I did was I met the program director. I emailed him. I was like, I'm here, I'm doing research, and I want to meet you so that we can go over my application. I'm not applying this year, but I will apply eventually, and I just want to get ahead of things, and I want to know what I can improve on. And he was more than okay with that. We met in person, and he was honest with me, and he told me the things I should be working on. But he also told me, okay, like, these are the people that may help you, and these are the people that you should be talking to. And I went from there, like, everyone. And I would talk to people, I would email them, and I'd just be like, okay, can I do an observership with you? Can I write a paper with you? Can I just shadow you in the clinic? Or can you go over my CV, and can we just discuss what I can be doing to improve my application? So you can say all of those things. And I think for the most part, people are okay with meeting over Zoom or even in person. Like, a lot of people were open to that as well. I think, like, sending out that first email, it's kind of like your first impression, and it has to be the best one. So it's really important to email people nicely. Like, don't just be like, hey, I'm here and I want to meet you. Like, no one's going to meet you like that. You have to introduce yourself properly. If somebody has recommended that you reach out to the specific person, mention that doctor's name, because that really matters. Then you can go on, and it doesn't have to be a super long email because nobody has the time to read that. Just highlight some things, and also highlight some things that you read about the person you're contacting. Like, you need to know something about this person. You need to appreciate what they've done. Like, say good things about them. Like, so after I matched, I got a couple of emails, and people had contacted me from Ziauddin, from other universities as well. But one thing that I saw, so the people who contacted me from another university, I feel like the way they spoke to me, it was really, really nice, and it made me want to help them. And I think that matters the most, because you're meeting somebody essentially for the first time. And if you're super nice to them, and if you've read up on what they've done, like, they're gonna know, okay, this person actually wants to see me. They're not just mass emailing. They have taken out the time to read about what I've done and what my accomplishments are, and they've appreciated those things. So I want to help this person. You kind of have to make people think that helping you was their idea. You have to make them think, because people want to feel good about themselves all the time. So you kind of have to make them think that it's their idea, that, oh, I want to help this person, and it makes them feel better, whatever. So I think what I was doing was, I was like meeting like 2 people every week, like 2 new people every week, for like a year before I even applied for application. It was not towards the end. So, like, in Ziauddin, like, everyone, or not even Ziauddin, I'm sure this happens in other medical schools as well. Like, right after you submit ERAS, like, everyone sends emails saying, hey, please recommend me to the people who have matched in certain programs. That's never going to work. That is not enough. Like, you might think in your head that's enough. Okay, maine bol diya is insaan ko, now I'll get an interview from this program because the Ziauddin grad is there. No, it doesn't work like that. This person doesn't know you. So why would they recommend you? And they're a resident. There's not much they can do anyways. So please don't send emails like that, and don't get your hopes up. I think the most important thing is don't get your hopes up by sending out these messages, because most likely that it's not going to pan out. You have to build connections organically. Like, talk to these people 6 months or a year before. Tell them, okay, this is the stage I'm at right now. I will be applying 6 months from now. What should I be doing? Right? And they'll help you along your journey. And then when you have applied, they're going to themselves want to recommend you because they were a part of your journey. So it's really important to do these things in advance. Like, it's really easy at the end of the day to just say, okay, oh, Ziauddin alumni is so unhelpful. Like, other universities are so much better because they have such a strong alumni network. No, we're also helpful. Everyone wants to help, but you can't help everyone, and you can't help strangers because no one's going to recommend you if they don't know you, right? So if you've been in contact with a certain resident, attending, fellow, whoever, for a longer period of time, they're most likely going to recommend you on their own. Like, I didn't message anyone, alhamdulillah, saying, please recommend me. I didn't say that myself. They wanted to do it themselves because they saw what I had been doing for the last 1 year or whatever, because I involved them in my journey. So it's really important to involve people in your journey from the very beginning. And you can just say, you know, if you have, you can say like, can you look at my CV? Can you mentor me? You can use these words. And a lot of people will say yes. And a lot of people will say they don't have the time, and that's okay too. You just have to reach out to as many people as you can.
Networking is very, very important. But having said that, it has to be done in the right way. Otherwise, it might go against you in certain cases. So about networking, like Abira said, the most important thing is to have people in your journey from the very beginning so that they're a part of it, of course. And the last point, Nasi, mailing doesn't really help. So the best case, because even if you reach out to people, they would say that we can only vouch for people who we know, who we worked with. So, of course, the ideal case scenario will be if you're doing a postdoc or anywhere, to meet as much people and show them in person, work ethics, etc. But sometimes we can't, meet a lot of people. We are not at an IMG friendly place. Maybe you're not in the US for a very long time. So there are certain things that even help me network while being in Pakistan for a very long time. That is how. Okay, so about contacts, what I understand is, because you see the word contacts interview, like I said, you know, that X and Y had lower score than me and that person got an interview or matched is because they had contacts. That's not entirely true. And contacts are not as unfair as you would think of them, because contacts require, or networking require, a lot of hard work done in the right way. So that is, and contacts, how it happens is that your relationship with the person vouching for you, their relationship and position in their program, because sometimes a resident can't do much, you know, even if it's just they give out, they vouch for you, they send an email on your behalf, and you're still not interviewed. So it's not like if X and Y has sent your name, you will receive an interview. That's not always true. And sometimes you do end up getting interviews or getting ranked high and matching at places where you don't have people watching for you. So it's not always like that. So how to make contacts if you are at a program, at a place, of course, meeting people like Abira said and all that in detail. But apart from that, when you start, for example, you need guidance. I had taken my step 2 last year, so I didn't know how to fill up this coming year till the time of September 2023. I reached out to Ziauddin alumni, people who I know were helpful, to ask them about a couple of options that I had in my mind. Should I go for research? Should I go for XYZ? So they did respond with very detailed, personalized responses. And the kind of email like you write briefly, and it has to be professional, humble, detailed, respectful, personalized, both in your respect and their respect. You have to make sure that they, like said earlier, that they feel that you have done their research, and also that you add what you've done so far in your journey briefly. If it's research, then regarding to research. If it's USC, about your clinical experiences, and also add a very good, well-written CV. This is very important. And add your future plans, how to go about it. What this does is that it shows that you've done your hard work. Now, this is the smart work coming in, right? Because you have to do the hard work. Now, you've done your CV, it shows, okay, this person has done so much. They're genuinely interested in my work, working in my program, or whatever, even if it's as simple as guidance, or please review my personal statement. Please, can you help me which programs I should signal? Can you help me with my CV? And you will not, I mean, you will hear back from people you least expected from. It's not always the people you expect the most from. You hear back from random people and they help you, they're willing to help you, because what they feel is, this is what I would also feel if I put myself in their position. I receive an email that, okay, this person has done 90%, 99% of the work, they're worthy of, you know, being a little push. Because looking at the number of applicants increasing every year, the competition, you need to have, I won't say need to, but it's a very good plus point to have someone to put in your name and vouch for you. But again, it's to their reputation also. They will not vouch for everyone, and not everyone's name also goes a long way. So you have to do your way, and then you have to, you know, make them believe that, okay, this person has done 95% of the work, let me help them and push them a little, and they'll help you. Because sometimes you see people reaching out to you, okay, I've taken step 1 to tell me what to do. I mean, you wouldn't want to help someone like that, right? So your CV, the emails you contact through, is because you can't practically meet everyone that you're going to form connections with, and it's better to have form connections as extensively as possible, and that is again through emails and, you know, writing. So the way you come across on paper, whether it's emails or if you're reaching out on LinkedIn, Twitter for guidance, etc., that is your introduction. So it has to be personalized, authentic, showing your hard work. Because I would genuinely, if I can help someone, I will help if I see that they've done their part. You have to do your homework. If you skip it in any form, it shows. So this is very important. How you do it, and again, have them very early on in your journey. Reaching out at the very end is not I mean, there are people also saying that can you please give in my name, and this, they're like, you know, last year I didn't reach out earlier on, so I'm starting out from now, can you give in my name to your program? I mean, who are you? I haven't started my residency yet, but I mean, who are you? Do I know your CV? Do I know you? Where are you in your journey? What are your future plans? So, I mean, if I don't feel that way, I doubt the other person that they're reaching out to will help them in any way if they want to. And having said that, expect help from anyone and everyone, and it goes a long way. You know, anyone can help you. If they can't, they guide you to other people. Like Abira said, if they are not that ING friendly, they might guide you to someone who might help you. So this is how it goes, you know. So that's pretty much my experience.
Also, just one more thing. I think as a rule, in your first email or your first message, do not say the words, please recommend me or please give my name in. Do not say that. That's very bad. They're immediately not going to help you at all. Because at the end of the day, whoever you're reaching out to, they know at the back of their mind that this is what you want, but you kind of have to earn it. So you have to prove that you're worthy of their recommendation. So the first meeting should always just be like, hey, I want you to know my journey, and I want to learn about your journey, and can you help me get an observership, research, paper, whatever, help me in my journey in one way or the other. That should be your first email. Do not say, please recommend me.
I just read a question in the chat. It says that how do people network during med school before they start the matching process? It's a very good time to start. Like I said, having people to know you beforehand in the journey. And the earlier you are in the journey, you can ask them for guidance. But again, you have to be very clear in your head what your timeline will be. Of course, you can't be very sure if you're very early in the process, but you have to show that you have done your part and how serious you are. And how you can start in med school is that ask them for guidance generally. That this is, I have done, this is my plan for the future. Can you recommend how should I go about it? These are the options that I have. Which one you suggest I should prioritize? This is how you add them to your journey very early on. So when it's the time to recommend, like Abira said, you don't even have to ask them to recommend you. They know you. They've been part of your journey from very early on. So, I mean, be the person you would want to help. Right? It's not that difficult. And one thing more, it's not exactly part of networking, but it somewhat is that I sent a letter of interest that we write, you know, when we apply to programs and we show our interest to programs, and that's sometimes we receive interviews. So in one of my interviews, the PD said that I read your letter of interest, and that's very few things that actually discussed in interviews. For me, it was discussed letter of interest, and she said I liked how personalized it was, it showed your interest in my program, and you had sent it. She exactly remembered the days and thrice I had sent on, periodically over a couple of months. But she said there was this person who had sent it 20 times. They had scheduled it every Monday. We had a joke in our program that we'll receive an email from this person on every Monday. They said, even if this person is from Harvard, we're not inviting them. So the point is that doing it the right way, not overdoing it, this goes a long way. It can end up having you an interview, eventually also getting you ranked, because if you show genuine interest, consistency in the right way. Sometimes if you overdo, and like someone said, if you push too much, it might actually work against you than help you.
Because I've been part of that side and part of that side as well, being part of the prelim and being part of the applicant. So both sides kind of they gave me different experiences. Don't be too I agree, I was kind of harsh in saying don't be too pushy. It's not about Ziauddin students, it's just generally like that, because people go hey, recommend me, this is my AMC number, and then they disappear, and then randomly they're like, hey, did you recommend me? And then every Monday, as she mentioned, or every Tuesday, random, after 2-3 days, I used to get this, hey, did you recommend me? Did you ask the program director? What happened? Did you say anything? I'm like, I am trying my best, but there's something that you can do and something that you cannot do. I was on the other side of the picture. I learned a lot. I also reached out to a lot of people, but then I kind of mended my ways, and I was like, 90% is your mehnat, 10% is your luck if somebody from your contacts can help you, but 90% is your mehnat. It's how you convince the program that you're good enough, and then statements, the letter of interest that you have, it should be more connected to you instead of randomly sending on Monday, hey, I'm interested in internal medicine. This is my AMC. Please take a look at my application and stop. So that kind of gets monotonous and boring. So I've been there. So I've done that too. So I learned a lot.
I just want to say one last thing. When you are networking with people and they're a part of your journey, it's also really important to update them at every stage. Like if you've accomplished anything, or if there's something significant, okay, you're done with all your interviews, let them know. Or if you think you've gotten all your interviews, let them know that you've gotten your interviews and this is where you got their interviews from, got the interviews from. Because who knows, maybe some random person you connected with 6 months ago knows somebody in that program. So keep updating your contacts and the people you've worked with in any capacity.
Don't forget to thank them, please, everyone. Even if they recommended and you didn't receive an interview from that program, thank them. So that's
that
very
goes
important.
without saying. Thank you, please, goes without saying, but I guess we should say it. You're right.
Okay, so before we start talking about this slide, there were a couple of points on the previous slide that we didn't really touch. It was about Twitter and LinkedIn and how important it is to keep your profiles updated and, so not everyone necessarily does this. Not everyone is always active on LinkedIn and Twitter and keep their profiles updated, but I did this. I used Twitter hugely to network. So this was my second cycle. I applied last cycle as well, and I did not match. And I used Twitter primarily during the previous cycle to network hugely with program directors. A couple of program directors even replied to a couple of my tweets and said, oh, do consider our programs. And I ended up applying to those. I didn't interview at them at the end, but sometimes program directors do look at that. The thing from Twitter that really helped me, people are always asking, how do we find research opportunities? How do we find things that you can, how can we be involved in research, especially in our specialty? And I'll tell you what worked out for me. And it's it doesn't happen to everyone. I understand I was lucky in that way, but because I was always so active on Twitter, there were a couple of people from other medical schools, and they reached out to me when they needed something, because I was always responding according to my experiences and according to everything I had went through. So when they reached out to me because they knew what my experiences were, they were actually a huge help to me in the end. So one girl, she needed a couple of her papers. She had submitted to the Academic Surgical Congress conference in the US. She had submitted 3 of her papers, but she did not have anyone to present them. And I was in the US, and she did not have a visa, and she thought it was unlikely that she would obtain a visa by the time the conference happened. So she reached out to me and said, okay, all 3 of my papers have been accepted. Can you go ahead and present them? And I had not been planning to attend this conference at all. But because she reached out to me, just because she knew me from Twitter, it gave me such a huge opportunity. I got 3 publications to my name. I went there, I presented presented one of the 3 abstracts. I had my name on all 3, and I connected with so many people over there, people who actually recognized me because I was active on Twitter. So that's one thing. That's how Twitter can help you. You know, you're always asking, how do we use Twitter to connect? This is one way Twitter can be used to connect. The second thing about the LinkedIn profile. So I'll talk about research positions and how they can help with general surgery match in the next slide, or maybe later. But so LinkedIn helped me. I always keep my LinkedIn profile very updated with all my experiences. And LinkedIn helped me actually land my current role as a clinical research resource coordinator at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I was applying to postdocs only because I'd heard that, you know, only postdocs help you match into general surgery, and, you know, you can only be a research assistant or a postdoc. But because my profile was so updated and I kept it open to recruiters, recruiters saw that my profile was matching a different sort of research position, and they reached out to me. And that's how I'm working in my current role. It's not a research role in the sense that, you know, I'm not writing, I'm not doing any basic science research. I'm not doing any lab work. I'm not writing articles every day. I'm probably not going to be getting any publications out of this, but it's still research experience in the US. And I've always been more oriented towards clinical research. I've worked in clinical research for a while. So LinkedIn was the reason I landed my current position, as well as my previous position at DM Clinical Research as a data coordinator. So LinkedIn can be a very useful resource. LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, these are very useful resources if you want to look for research positions. Moving on. So let's talk about US clinical experience. Is obtaining USCE important, and can I match without USCE? I speak strictly from a general surgery point of view, but I do know of people who have previously matched in internal medicine without doing their USCE. It's getting very, very rare now, just because it's getting so much more competitive in recent years, what with our political situation, as well as just an increased number of candidates. But I would now say that while it is a remote chance that you could match without USC in the current scenario, USC is definitely important now, and you really need to first of all, figure out what field you need to do your USC in. I figured it out much later, so that's why, like I mentioned, I wasted an opportunity of doing an elective in general surgery by doing an elective in IM during my final year. So, you know, first of all, you need to decide what field you're interested in, and then you need to work towards getting a USC opportunity. Where should my USC be at? Now, there are a lot of agencies that offer USCE, but again, just because of the sheer number of applicants now, most of them are saturated, and they're spilling out the same LORs for all of the different candidates. It's just literally the same for everyone now, and program directors are noticing where the LORs are coming from. There are a few elective opportunities provided through agencies that are now being blacklisted by program directors because they know that, okay, this person is giving LORs for everyone. Let's not, you know, this doesn't seem to be very genuine. This seems to be very generic, and it can't speak properly for the applicant. So ideally, your USC should be at good programs where you intend to match. Programs that have a residency, that have their own residency program, just because that USC opportunity will give you such an important opportunity to connect with residents, with medical students, with the program director, sort of make your way in the team so that you can show them that, you know, I am someone who can work with this team. I would say my match this year is entirely dependent on my observership that I did at UPenn last year. I matched into UPenn just because I did an observership, a 4-week observership at UPenn in the general surgery department. And I used that opportunity to make friends with a lot of the residents, make friends with a lot of the medical students, meet faculty members. Everyone I saw, I went up and introduced myself to, you know, even if it wasn't to ask them for something. I was like, oh, hi, I'm Amna. I'm a medical student from Pakistan, medical graduate from Pakistan. I'm just rotating here for a couple of weeks. And, you know, even with their with their nurses and their APPs, the advanced practice practitioners they have, and other team members, I was like, oh, you know, maybe I hadn't even applied at that point, but I was like, oh, you know, maybe you might see me as a resident here soon, even though like I had no idea even if I'm applying this cycle. So just that confidence, just talking to people that it gets you into places where you didn't expect. So your USC should ideally be in locations, in geographic locations, and at programs where you see yourself working at in the future. How should I behave and interact during my USC? Like I said, I did not have any electives in general surgery, but I did have this observership. A lot of people reach out to me and say, "Oh, I've heard observerships are no use for a general surgery match. You need to have hands-on electives," and I would say that's untrue just because of my experience. As an observer, I was not allowed to have any patient contact. I was not allowed to have any hands-on experience at all, do nothing at all. Like I could do nothing, but I didn't let that stop me. I did what I could. I opened doors. I carried gloves in my pocket all the time. I ran around to, if they needed some medicine from the medicine cabinet, I ran to the nurse, found her, brought it, whatever I could do. If the team started rounding at 5:30, I tried to be there at 5 a.m. every day, consistently, just so that they see that, okay, this is a person who can adapt with us and who can adapt to the team, work with us, and just sort of be a part of the team. Like, even if you're an observer, so in my case, I was emailing a lot of people. I was cold emailing, and I got mostly rejections, but this one doctor, agreed to take me on. And that was the reason I ended up doing this observership. When I reached there, that doctor completely ignored me. She acted like I did not exist. I don't know what the reason was, maybe it was, I have no idea what it was, but she literally refused to acknowledge my presence. And what we tend to do usually is when someone sort of accepts us as a rotator in their department, we tend to stick with them. I did not do that, thankfully. I don't know what made me, but thankfully, alhamdulillah, I didn't do that. I saw that she was sort of distancing me, so I tried to make friends with the residents. I started going after the resident team. I started, spending my day with them, and only interacted with that doctor when she was in the OR, because what is she doing otherwise, right? She's sitting around for her meetings and stuff, and I was wasting my time that way. So with the residents, I learned floor work, I learned patient flow, all of those things. So I used that time instead to meet new people. And even though this particular doctor who agreed to bring me on, I did not have a very good experience with her. She also did not end up writing me a letter. But just because I had interacted with other people, I ended up rotating with another doctor for another couple of weeks. And that doctor wrote me, and another one, two other doctors wrote me very strong letters that helped getting me the interview. So you need to behave confidently. What I feel is we feel like we don't belong when we enter a scenario, when there's all like American grad doctors or people who, who from other universities that we consider superior to ours. We end up feeling like, oh, I don't belong here. And we end up like not talking as much, just following them around, not interacting with them. And I think what you do, how you present yourself, if you give yourself the confidence that, I belong here, I made the most of the opportunities that brought me here. When you start believing that, it automatically leads you to the level where you exude confidence and other people start accepting as if you belong. So that's how you should behave during your USC. Don't be meek. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to sort of step out of your comfort zone a little bit. Sometimes we're afraid of saying the right thing just because it could be wrong. And we don't really let ourselves, no one expects you to be the ultimate clinician at this stage. All right. So even if you say something wrong, it's going to be fine. No one's going to penalize you. No one's going to hold it against you. We're all learning. And another thing I would like to talk about is a lot of people tend to, there's two extremes. Some people sort of tend to showcase their identity and their views a lot. And while that's a good thing, you should never let anyone else's perception of you dictate your identity. For example, even though I was rotating in the surgery department, I'm a hijabi. I did not remove my hijab, even though other people had sort of recommended, like, if you wear a hijab, they might see it as a deterrence in the future because you might insist on wearing a hijab in the OR. And no one questioned my hijab at all, and I did not let it be something that that's up for a question, right? The other extreme is people sort of talk about their political views a lot. And I know of someone recently who has not made it difficult for herself, but also for future applicants from her medical school and from her country. because she was too outspoken about her views about the current global scenario, political scenario, everything. So I just feel like, that's something you need to keep in mind, to not offend people. I understand that our views are important, but there's a time and place for everything. And sometimes it's not the right thing for you to talk about them in a professional work environment. The last point on the slide is, are LORs guaranteed, and what do I do if my preceptor isn't approachable? Like I talked about, the doctor who agreed to sponsor me, she did not. Even though I understood that she had no interest in giving me an LOR, I still shot my shot. I emailed her at the end of my rotation and said, "Oh, I might be applying the cycle. Do you think it might be okay for you to write a letter for me?" And she, I'm so glad she did, but she did email back saying, "I'm not going to be able to write a strong letter for you." I'm just thankful she did reply and she didn't write me a bad letter. I'm glad. But things like that can happen. And in that case, you just need to maximize your opportunity. You need to interact with all the different types of people in the team. From the two doctors who did write my LORs, one of them was very quick with it. She asked me for my personal statement, for my CV, and she had my letter written and uploaded in the next 2 days. The other person I worked with and asked for an LOR was apparently, I did not know at the point when I asked him for the letter, but later I found out he's apparently famous for never writing letters and never doing any sort of work that requires any computer interaction, actually. So I was, I had worked with him. I had over 2 weeks with him, so I did want a letter from him. So in that scenario, what played out for me was one of the residents I'd befriended. She was a PGY6, so she was a senior at the program, and she literally dragged him, sat him down, made sure he wrote my letter. She drafted it with him, and then she also made sure he uploaded it on time. This was over a period of one and a half week. Like I was communicating with her every day, and that was only possible because I spoke to her, I befriended her, we talked about a lot of things. I was on the team with her, I worked with her. She was comfortable enough vouching for me. So that wouldn't have happened if I'd only been running around that one doctor who'd agreed to sponsor me and in the end ignored me. So that's my 2 cents on how you should behave during your clinical experience.
About the US clinical experience, I just want to add something. I think all good points were made. Something that I experienced myself was that, when you get to a US experience, you most probably given a step or whatever, step 2 or whatever, right? You have to realize that everyone else has also given the steps. So more or less, the knowledge plane is here or here. Everyone knows the basics, and more or less, they know other things as well. What these people are looking for, more than your knowledge, is that how you behave as a team member. This is something that's very important. Sometimes you don't realize that for so long you've been studying by yourself, and you don't realize that, okay, these guys, when they see you, something that they're really going to see is how you interact with other people. Are you a team player? Do you stick around when the going gets tough? So whenever you guys go for your experiences, US experiences, yes, be your best in your educational objectives and everything, but make sure that you guys are making it easy for others. And obviously this goes both ways. Also be seeing oh, is this elective where everyone sticks around for out for each other, or do they not? Those were my 2 cents that it really made a difference. I had an elective which I did not have many great participants with me, and I wasn't that really didn't motivate me to do well. And then I had a residency elective just a couple of months ago that ended up that I got around 10 to 12 residents to recommend me, because they just liked that I really was making sure that I was part of the team, that I was making sure that I got to know them more than just their, okay, what's your schedule, what's this, that. It goes a long way, and it will go a long way in your general professional life. That's just something that I wanted to add. Thank you.
Dr. Amar. So let's just move on and go to the interviews. Dr. Masuma and Dr. Sarah.
Starting with now we're at interviews. So assuming that you are good on paper and everything. So interviews do play a very important role because at the end of the day, it's about programs also ranking you high. And one thing that makes a significant difference is your interviews, because you've landed at an interview, that means you've done well otherwise academically and so on. So never, of course, underestimate your interview experience. About timeline and scheduling, well, of course, it depends on when you receive the interviews. The season goes at different pace for every applicant. I don't think there is a particular way about it. Some end up getting interviews earlier in the season, some throughout, some later. For me, generally, I would suggest, if you receive interviews, the ones that you're planning on ranking higher in your list, if you have a little idea, I would suggest scheduling them slightly later, and probably the ones that you're going to rank lower earlier on, so that it adds to your practice. Don't keep it very early, because you do need practice. In terms of mock interviews, of course, ask people for mock interviews, so your experience matters a lot. I read a post on a social media platform where someone had scheduled their interviews very early on in the season, and they think they didn't do well and they could have done better if they had practiced more. So don't make it. I don't personally think that getting done with the interviews very early on is very it's a good idea. I think giving your best in preparing is very important, and preparation is required for interviews. Of course, your personality that you have had for like 25, 26, 27 years is the main thing, but there are a couple of things that you need to work on. So that needs time. But scheduling very right in the end can also harm you in a way, because you do end up getting interviews very late in the season also. So what happens is then the interviews clash. So scheduling becomes a problem, and that is something to consider. So that is how my approach was. I scheduled them according to my preference that I had. Commonly asked, okay, so about interviews, interview preparation, there are two approaches. One is general and one is specific. About general is that you prepare the commonly asked questions. You can find this list anywhere on social media, it's shared. Well, to give you a general idea, I have a list. It's generally about telling the very first question that's mostly there is, tell me about yourself. One thing that I found tricky was that thankfully I got early on in my mock interviews. Do as much of mock interviews as you can. For mock interviews, of course, ask your seniors, Ziauddin alumni, etc. They help you a lot. Ziauddin, I think, also assigns you a mentor for mock interview. So go for mock interviews. They do help you a lot. Record yourself, and etc. Okay, so for mock interviews, the first question is normally tell me about yourself. This question is not always phrased in this way. They can start by saying, okay, tell us something that's not on your CV. This is in another way, phrased in a different way, but tell me about yourself. So just whatever the question that you're asked, this is mostly the questions that you have practiced in your commonly asked questions, is that they're phrased differently. So what you have to do is practice the commonly asked questions. I'll name a few to give you an idea. And then what you do is when you're asked a question, you have to mentally think what exactly they're asking, the way they phrase, and then you can take 5 minutes and then talk about it. Make sure you just don't start talking and then thinking while you're talking, because it shows and then you waste a lot of time. Time is very important there. You have to be to the point. And you have to be talking about, first I'll talk about the commonly asked questions and then talk about the general parts of the interview. So it's about yourself. It's about your strengths and weaknesses. I would suggest talk about three and prepare examples, specific examples of strengths and weaknesses. Not all the questions are asked, but this is generally what most of the interviews consist of. And why our program? Now, this question requires a lot of homework. And this is the part where you do a thorough research on the program. You need to know everything, at least almost everything that they have provided on the website. Sometimes interview programs give you their packages or additional information. Make sure that you go through it, because it doesn't look really good by the end when they ask you if you have questions for us and you ask the same thing that they have mentioned. So it shows that you haven't really done your homework. So knowing about it so that you can come up with specific questions and meet and greet and generally. So it shows you can add on to the conversation about the specific information that they've provided. And also, again, I keep on saying it's a match. So what you do is you look at your CV and then you see what the program has to offer and you form the connection. So that kind of helps you guide the conversation, because probably you're looking for research and the program doesn't offer much. So that doesn't really make you a good match. So knowing your CV in and out, knowing your personal statement in and out, it goes back to, again, you have to be the same person who has written the person statement. They can't be interviewing a different person from the person in the person statement. It shows. So knowing your CV, your person statement, yourself, knowing the program, whatever information they provided, and then connecting the dots of similarities. So just to have an idea how to direct your conversation, relatability. You can do research on, you are told your interviewers beforehand, you can do a little research on that, knowing about their specialities, maybe a little interest, so that can, again, lead to something similar, compatibility. They can ask you about any interesting case, any complicated case that you remember, any time that you received a negative feedback, how you overcame it, any problem, any conflict you had with a coworker, how you went about it, any mistake you made in your clinical rotations, how was your take on it? Why internal medicine, the difference between clinical practice in US and Pakistan, and so on. But basically, it's more like a conversation than a viva, and it goes from one question to the other. How mostly what happens is that you introduce yourself, and they, depending on what you provided on CV, person statement, or your first answer telling about yourself, they'll pick on something that they like. Some might talk about hobbies, maybe some other experience, and it expands. So that's very important to back up your CV and person statement to know it, right? And small talk, okay. So when you're talking, it's very important to also see the tone of the person, to see how the other person is. Some programs, the other doctor is pretty serious and they're looking for actually very serious experiences and so on. And sometimes the program director or the residents, they're more of a fun environment. You have to see how the conversation is going. Of course, you have to keep it 2-3 things generally. Be yourself, be confident, try to come across as someone. It's very difficult to come across a certain way in 20 minutes of virtual interview. Well, I had only virtual interviews, so that's what I can talk of. I'm not very experienced in person interviews, but you have to come across as confident, be yourself. Don't try to be a certain way, because like we discussed in the presentation, it's not about being perfect. It's more about being yourself and real, because it's a match. They have to see, you have to come across the person who you are. Confidence, a likable personality. If they mostly, sometimes they also have a meet and greet and group sessions. Don't try to over talk someone else. Let other people talk. If they are talking about something, sound genuinely interested. Don't just wait for your turn and have your question. Sound genuinely interested. Ask about what they've shared. Listen to what they're saying. Be respectful. You don't always have to say something. Have genuine questions. Don't have the similar basic ones. It shows that you're asking for the sake of asking. Having said that, don't be the quiet one also, because you have to, at the end of the day, or for an interview, to present yourself in the best way. So this is very important. And be natural. And one thing is that you time yourself, because you can't go overboard. You have limited time. So whenever they ask you something, just don't avoid going on and on. Come to the point. Whatever they've asked, come to the point and follow your experience or whatever with what you've learned, and so that you can even show how it added to the strength that you're bringing as a resident to the program, if that the question is. Otherwise, it's mostly interviews are very casual, a normal conversation type. But you have to make a good impression, so try not to go on and on and on into insignificant or maybe irrelevant detail, because the time is limited. Let the other person talk and listen to them when they're talking. And about general interviews, you have to look professional, of course. Make sure that the lighting is really good. Make sure that the background is either plain or if you, I had a painting at the time of my interview that I had painted. It had a personal, interesting question to it, and it initiated a lot of questions. So if you have anything specific to your personality, I saw people having guitars or I don't know, different things that that was very close to them. So if anything that adds to your personality. So I did my homework about my CV, person statement, the programs, commonly asked questions. And then one thing I would recommend is a couple of videos, Dr. Omar Tariq, Dr. Omar Bakal, I think he's at Mayo Clinic, Arizona, I think. What he did is he discussed how to approach all the commonly asked questions. And he didn't like, you don't have to have the same answers, just to tell you how to go about it. Of course, your answers are personalized to your experience. And what Dr. Omar Tariq's interviews website, what is it called? YouTube channel was helpful, was that he uploaded mock interviews of different candidates. So what I did was I made a list of the things that I liked about the candidate or I think I did not like. And try to record yourself and time yourself, ask your friends or whoever's at home, because sometimes you don't realize the mistakes that you're making. Sometimes there are a lot of pauses in your conversation or you sound nervous, etc. So that's very important to keep track of it. But otherwise, it's if you're yourself, if you didn't really lie a lot on your CV, person statement, you know how to present yourself. You're honest, you can back up with all the conversations, because one question will lead to another one, and they can tell if you're making it up, if the research was just for the sake of the name and you have no idea about the research and the impact it had on you personally, professionally, they can tell. So it harms you more. So if you're yourself, confident, honest, and you know the program and your the stuff that you've mentioned in your application, I think you're good to go. If anyone wants to add anything.
I just want to add something, and some people might disagree with this, but for most of the questions, there are no right or wrong answers. Most of them are just like, they'll ask you questions and but just make sure that whatever you're answering, you're confident about it and you have a strong argument to back up your opinion. So in my interviews, I had moments where they didn't agree with what I had answered, but I had a strong argument for my answers, and they were fine with that. So there are no right or wrong answers. Just make sure that whatever you're saying, you stand by it.
Another tip sort of is, if you're on a good talking terms with one of the residents at the program you're interviewing at, you can just like, for me, my resident offered beforehand. She said, once you find out who your interviewers are, let me know. And I sent her the names once I found out, and she told me like little tidbits about all three interviewers of mine. So for example, for one, she told me, oh, he just got married. Another one, she told me he had like a gardening hobby. And then for the attending, she told me what his research interests are. So I just read up about his research interests beforehand. And for the other two, I knew like, okay, these are talking points for them. And I was able to like sort of, have a nice conversation with them about both of these things. Similarly, for another program I interviewed at, it was Mercy Catholic Medical Center's general surgery program. So I know that program is very high on spirituality. And I know for a fact that their surgery department chair is also like a very spiritual person. So, I just sort of found a way during the conversation to talk about that aspect, how I also consider myself a spiritual person, and we just talked about that for a while. So find these talking points beforehand so that you know what could be a conversation you could have with one of those interviewers.
I want to add something here.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to say that I think right now the actual content of the interviews and what we'll be talking about isn't really everyone's main priority right now. The priority right now is to actually get the interviews, and then maybe we can have another session later on, or you guys will be practicing your interviews at that time. But I wanted to highlight that everyone knows when before COVID, all interviews were in person. Then during COVID, all interviews went virtually. Now the trend is changing again. I don't think internal medicine had many in-person interviews, but other specialties did. I applied only in family medicine, and most of my interviews were in person. Some of them gave virtual options, some of them did not. So keep in mind that whatever you're applying for, you might have to do in-person interviews, which is a completely different ballgame. I'm not going to go into any detail of it right now because some of you will not need that information. And it's also something to deal with later on. But if you're traveling the Europe that you're applying, for example, if you're going for electives, keep in mind that you could stay in the US for 6 months. So maybe try to plan your trip in a way that you do your electives in the summer and stay on till interview season. Maybe make multiple trips a year if that's, you know, financially possible for you. But just keep in mind that your interviews won't necessarily all be virtual. Things are changing now.
I just want to add a small point. To whoever has problems like during interviews and speaking and articulating yourselves, someone in 5th year gave me a really good advice, Dr. Atif from urology, is that you should slow down and practice your answers in the mirrors. This can go a long way for histories or anything. So anyone who has a problem with just articulating themselves or their answers, the more genuine your answer is going to be, the easier it's going to be. Here, it's just a tip. Thanks.
And there's one more thing that I would want to mention. People, they have a couple of researchers that they have just given their names to. They've not actually done the researches. So when they come in the interview, make sure that you have all the researches in front of you and you know what you work on, and do your homework. If you don't, even if for me, if I don't remember what researches I've done, at least put it in front of you so you have an idea. So you don't go like blank in front of the interview processes, because they might ask random questions from random, like I did we used to have a Dana research project back in Ziauddin, and then and they were asking about Dana research project, which was, I don't like, I said I don't even remember like a couple of years ago. I didn't even remember, and then I was like trying to think. But then if you're really fluent with talking and everything, you will kind of use those filler words. They know the filler words, but at least, you know, get a minute or two. And sometimes during interview, what happens is with like with speaking, if you do not like cannot catch up with an answer, for example, they asked you some random question, you're like, what are your favorite hobbies? Then you can laugh and you can smile and you say, yeah, I have a lot of hobbies. And then from the back of your mind, you can come up with the answers. So if you have any, you can reach out to me. You have my email. If you have any problems with communication, because I love communicating, I love talking. If there's any problem with speaking, or you need any speaking or any kind of session that I can help with, I'm always available. I love to talk, and I can actually teach you on how to speak like a professional as well. Because I did that course too for motivational speaking. So I'm always there. I'll tell you a trick in case you just fill up with answers and then they will not even know that you're trying to make up answers at the back of your mind. So I'm always available. And Amna also knows that I love talking. So so you can reach out to me. That's not a problem.
One thing that I would like to add on to what Mariam said, things are changing. This year we had, for internal medicine especially, we had purely virtual interviews, but every program had an option for you to visit the site. So like site visits were an option, and like the doctors, the program directors who I've spoken to recommended going and visiting, just to not leave anything unturned, right? So plan your US trips accordingly with the intention of being there during the interview season, just so that you are available to do on-site visits, because virtual meet and greets are also very important, because the residents do have a say in ranking you higher or lower. So don't just, you know, like money is important, but this is also an investment. So try to be there during the interview season. And like Mariam said, you also have to be mindful of the 6-month period if you're going on a tourist visa.
Really quick, it's almost done. So estimated costs, essentially when you're sitting for this journey, you have to be prepared to spend a lot of money. I'm just going to go over them quickly. So each UR subscription for 12 months, I'm guessing you guys are going to need it for that long, is 540 USD. Then you need ECFMG certification to sit for the exam, which is going to be $160. You're gonna now the cost has increased even more. I'm so sorry for you guys, but like step 1, step 2, step 3, it's all 1,195 USD each. And if you're choosing to give the exam in the US, it's going to be $195 cheaper. So you can plan that. Essentially, you now need OET as well, which is $455. And if you are giving the step 3, which I highly recommend because most people will, you need to take the clinical case simulations as well. And I feel like the 6-month deal is better than the 3-month deal. The 6-month deal is $95, whereas the 3-month deal was, as I recall, 80 something. Essentially, I'm not even counting the elective, observership, flight costs, God knows what. So it's going to be very expensive. Let's go to the next slide. So while you're applying, the first thing you need to do is take that ARAS token fee, which is $165. Then you need to transmit your transcript to the programs, and that's $80. Then you need the pathway application, which is $925, and that's going to depend on what pathway you're doing. I did pathway 1 because I did my house job. Then there's a ranking fee. So ideally you would rank 10 programs, but if and 20 up to 20 programs you can rank for 70. If you're ranking more, then there are going to be additional costs associated. All of this information is available on their websites as well. If you're doing a couples match, it's going to be $45 per head. Next slide, please. Right. So they on the ARAS website, they have a residency fee calculator. So essentially, you're going to add, if you're applying to one specialty, you're just going to add the number of programs and it's going to calculate it for you. I'll go into how it calculates in the next slide. But this is the sort of Excel sheet that you can download from the website. It does the job for you. Next slide, please. All right. So I screenshotted this from the website. The way you apply to programs is they have a cost attached to each specialty. So let's just say if you're doing internal medicine, the first 10 programs that you apply to will be $99. And every 10 above that, let's just say if you're doing 20 programs, the first 10 will be $99. And then the next 10 will be $19 each. Similarly, every time you go higher and higher, it's just going to increase. So by these increments. So 30, it's going to be $23 each, and 31 or more, $27 each, which is going to be the case for all of us. So the first fee will be $99, and then you multiply it, like we have to apply to at least 100. So we're looking at 100 into 27. Essentially, if you're changing the specialty, then each specialty will be another 100 for the first 10. So essentially 30 EM programs, first 10 is 99, then 10 into 19. You can just do the calculation. I'm sure it's clear. And you can read up on that as well. So that's all about costs. If you guys need any more information, it's available online. Thank you.
Covered a lot of this portion in the other topics, so I won't be spending too much time on this. But but just to give you guys a quick overview. So we've already talked about the ERAS application, how to reach out to programs, signals. The rank list is a little bit premature at this point if you're still considering applying. The only thing I'll talk about in terms of dual applications to multiple specialties, I know Abira touched on it before also. So the thing to remember is you have one application. You can have as many personal statements as you like and as many letters of recommendation as you like. So you can have a personal statement for each program, and some people do that, but you only have one application. So all of the experiences that you put in are going to go to every program that you apply to, regardless of specialty. So I applied to neurology and internal medicine both. So I did rotations in both of them, and I had to send both of those rotations to all programs in neuro and IM. So that's something you need to keep in mind. Similarly, your CV, which has your publications, will also go to both or as many specialties as you apply to. So it's fine to have a primary specialty and a backup specialty. And you can tailor your CV respectively, but just keep in mind that you will have to send your application and your CV to all programs. That I think is about it, because we talked about pretty much everything else. I guess the last thing is I would also recommend that people look into other specialties apart from internal medicine, because IIM has gotten very competitive in the last 2 or 3 years because just too many people are applying. Programs routinely have 5 or 6,000 applications for 10 or 20 spots. So look into things like FM, psych, neuro. These are specialties where if you show a commitment to that specialty, they will give you more importance than an IM program, right? So that's all I have, and then we can just, I think, go on to the questions.
I just want to quickly add something about dual applying. If you're applying to two specialties, you can't just apply to, like, if I'm applying OB, I can't apply OB in something completely random that I have no prior experience in. And be prepared in your interviews, because they might ask you, okay, like your CV is like very much OB, why did you apply to family medicine? So you have to kind of be able to correlate the two and make sure all your experiences are relevant, because they can easily ask you. I was asked in my interviews, like, oh, like you're so into women's health, why family medicine then? So you kind of have to be like, okay, so family medicine is so versatile. You can do like an OB track, you can do women's health later on. So you need to be prepared in the interviews to be asked these questions, and because you can't at any point let them know that you've applied to two specialties, because they're immediately going to be like, okay, this person is not committed to our specialty, why should we take them? So be very careful about that. Make sure none of your letters of recommendation say, okay, I recommend this person for OB and family medicine. Do not send letters like that. Like, I had a common LOR, my research LOR, I sent it to family medicine programs and OB programs, but I made sure that my letter writer knew not to mention the name of the specialties, because if she had written both, then all the programs would know that I've dual applied, and that's something that you should not at any point let the programs know in your interviews, in your CV, in your personal statement, nowhere.
Dr. Tuba will talk on intermedicine.
It's internal medicine, one of the most common, I would say, IMG friendly, most wanted. Not saying other specialties are not, but I guess internal medicine is good to deal with in case of applying, in case of specialization, because there branches out. People like internal medicine, it suits their lifestyle. Not saying that. I've been in surgery, I was in plastic surgery, and then because a lot of people convinced me that no, in US internal medicine is the most wanted, so I started racing in that process. Do not do that. Just check what you're very comfortable with, and make sure that you have a very well defined journey of what you really want to see yourself in as the next 10 years. So the second thing that I would like to mention is increasing competition, because it's getting really competitive. Sorry about my PP. It's getting really competitive. In the next few years, it's gonna get around, like, my program had like around 7,000 applicants, and I'm sure it's nearly the same with every specialty as well. But I would say, because my resume had like 2 different fields, what my mentor told me, one of the people, Ziauddin grad, told me that it's better that you stream, like, for example, do not apply. Somebody saying go for path, somebody saying go for psych, somebody saying go for this. So there are a couple of things, and there were a couple of experiences that were listed on my ERAS application, which I would not suggest anyone else should do that, because if you're planning to go, for example, internal medicine or family medicine or anything, make sure your CV reflects that, instead of start doing your homework as soon as possible. Do not rush to take your examination, and ask everyone nicely. Be nice to them, and inshallah, everything will be fine. If anyone needs any help, we're all here. I'm sure our team is amazing, and our seniors are amazing. So please do not fear. Please be confident of yourself and make Ziauddin proud. We need more Ziauddin people out there. I've seen other alumni being shown, oh, they have a good faculty and alumni. We need to be stronger than them. So I'll just wait for everyone to message me. I'll try my level best. And inshallah, if you need anything, please, Ghabrao mat, I'm just here. Okay?
So Dr. Neha wants to go next. Dr. Neha.
So I'll just talk a little bit about child neurology. As you all know, it's a highly specialized field, and not many people would be approaching it. But if you are, I'm here to help you, because I know it's very different, and a lot of you might not even know about it. So I'll just talk a little about it. So I just want to say, just so you know, it's a 5 years program. First 2 years is general peds, then the third year is adult neurology, and then the last 2 years are for child neurology. And and in the end, you have to take two boards: the general peds board and then the child neurology board. So you will be double board certified, and you will already be like a specific specialty, right? So other than that, okay, so for any specialty that you're applying to, neurology, child neurology, gynae, anything, you need to show commitment to the field from advance. Okay, like I was always interested in neurology / child neurology, so I made sure that my CV was very neuro specific. All my researches were in child neurology, and my electives, I unfortunately did not find many electives in child neuro, but I did one, which was really helpful, and I was able to get 2 LORs out of it. And but other than that, and everyone knows it's hard to find electives in child neurology, so you just need, you can work on your research and then show your commitment through that. And what to say? Yeah, so it's important to do rotations in the field and have your research in the field. Even if you cannot find USC in the field, reach out to Pakistani neurologists or child neurologists and go work with them. It works differently from medicine. I feel like there are a lot of differences. One, I think most programs are university programs, right? So it's not like, oh, don't apply to university programs, you have lances, as it probably is for IM, but for neuro and child neuro, things like this, you will mostly find university programs. So you need to apply to those. Another thing that differs from internal medicine is that you will not necessarily find rotations at programs who will take you. All of my rotations were at programs where I had 0 chances of matching, but those were the rotations that I found, and I had to do them. And so it works differently for neuro and child neuro. You have to go to places where you might not have any chances of matching. You have to do you can do rotations at clinics, and that will also hold a lot of will also be really good for you. So that is one thing that I want to add. Do not expect interviews from where you're rotating, and just like try to get good LORs. Just try to get. I have not seen any of my LORs, so I'm sure they were good because they work. But so just try to get good LORs from them. Make a good make most out of your rotation. But do not expect to get interviews from those places. Again, something that's really important is why you want to choose this, why you want to go for this field. That's something that's really important for you to decide for yourself, and then sell it to the programs and wherever you interview at, like and through your CV and through your personal statement as well. It's really important to show them why this field is important to you, why you might have a close personal experience, but don't make it like a redundant personal experience, like, oh, like I saw or like a personal relative had dementia or something like that. So and another thing that differs from IM is that everybody, since there are less applicants for these fields, so your personal statements do get read, like initially. For IM, I've heard that, I'm not sure, but this is what I've heard, that they usually first they select you for the interview and then they read the personal statements. But for neuro and child neuro, from what I have heard and from what I have researched, they look at the personal statements in advance and then they choose for the interview. So that's really, so personal statements are really important for these fields. And other than that, commitment to the field. I think it's really important, and this goes for everyone, not just people who are interested in neuro. It's really important to have a point or something about you that stands out, because everyone has USC, everyone has good step scores, everyone has researchers, but there needs to be something, and it doesn't have to be like something that's medically related. It can be anything, it can be non-medical. For me, it was baking. And all my interviews, I was asked about it. I was asked about my interest in baking. I have a home run baking business. I was asked about that. So you need to, I feel like everyone can find that. It can be a hobby. It can be any kind of interest, a sport, just anything outside of medicine that, or even in medicine, like maybe you like to volunteer a lot, or you like to go on medical camps or something like that. So just anything that makes you stand out. I think you should highlight that in your CVs and your personal statement, and you will definitely be asked about that in your interviews. So yeah, I think that's about it. I cannot think of anything else right now, but I'm just gonna leave my email address in the chat, and just feel free to reach me out if you have any questions regarding child neuro or neurology, because I applied to both. My top priority was child neuro, but I didn't want to go unmatched, so I applied to neurology as a backup as well. And so yeah, okay. Thanks.
To keep it brief. So I feel like the most important thing is when you're applying to a competitive specialty, you're going to hear a lot of words of discouragement. A lot of people are going to tell you, do not do this, do not listen to them. You know, if you're trying to do something different, obviously that has not been the other person's experience, so they're going to tell you based off their experience, and they're going to be like, stick to what is known, what has worked in the past. And that, like, obviously I went back and forth on it so many times because I was just hearing this from all sorts of people. Oh, like, just do internal medicine, it's so much easier, it's so much easier. But you kind of have to make that decision and then stick to it. Like, I think for me, the biggest thing that helped me decide that I want to do this is when I got my research position. When I was applying for research positions, I was applying in different departments because I was just like, I need to do a postdoc because I was moving anyways and I didn't want any gaps in my CV. So I was applying to all departments. But then alhamdulillah, what I actually ended up getting it in OB. So I was like, okay, so if I'm doing this research postdoc, I don't want to regret not applying in OB. So I just took that leap of faith and I applied. And I think after I matched also, so many people had reached out to me later, and there were so many people who like were old grads or whatever, and they're like, you know, we just never even tried because we were told it's so hard and no one has ever done it. And then you have this regret. So I think that was the biggest thing. I didn't want to look back and think that I could have done that. So I just gave it my best shot, honestly. And then I learned a lot from talking to other people who had matched, either residents, fellows, attendings, anyone. Like, I just tried my best to learn from their journeys and try to implement as much as I could. But I think at the end of the day, like, you hear a lot of advice. You need to just take the advice that you think works for you. Not all advice is good advice. Other than that, I think when you're applying to a competitive specialty, you need to know that people, it's a smaller community and people know each other. Everyone knows each other when you're applying to a competitive specialty, and people actually take out the time to read your application, which I really, really liked. Like, everyone I interviewed with for OB, they had read my application inside out, and I love that because they asked me very specific questions. They knew exactly who I was before the interview even began. And it was very different from my family medicine interviews. My family medicine interviews were not like that. And when I interviewed for OB, so at one hospital, I interviewed with like 6 people, and all 6 at each of my interviews, it was always like 6 interviews. And each of these people had read my application. They had made notes. They asked me very specific questions. People quoted my personal statement back to me. So please be very intentional. If you're applying to a competitive specialty, don't think that, oh, no one's going to read the personal statement. This doesn't matter. Everything is evaluated, and then they extend the interview because you're an IMG. They're not even going to waste an interview because you are taking a spot away from an American grad. So they're not even going to waste an interview until they are 100% sure. Another thing, also, I'm trying my best. Like, I'm not going to gatekeep. I want you guys to know everything. So another thing was, since it is a small community, one of the program directors actually reached out to one of my letter writers. This is something that I had never heard of because, you know, in internal medicine, like, so many people write in their LOR, okay, contact me here if you have any questions, but nobody actually bothers to do that because you get so many applications. But in my case, my letter writer told me, okay, this program director contacted me and we spoke about you over the phone or whatever. So those are things that are very important. Like, your letter writers should know you inside out, because if they get a call, they should say good things about you, and that may get you an interview. I ended up getting an interview from that program, and I think that because the program director actually made the effort of calling my letter writers, they were definitely interested. So yeah, I think other than that, when you're applying to a competitive specialty, at least all the other IMGs who had matched, they had all done a research year. I didn't meet a single person who matched straight out of graduation or had no research postdoc experience in the US. Every single person had a postdoc, because I think the idea of a postdoc, especially in the field you're interested in, just shows your commitment to the field. It shows that you have dedicated 2 years, 3 years, whatever, years of your life to this specialty, and you really want this. It's not about the number of publications. It's not about anything. It's not about the work you're doing in the research. It just shows your dedication. In some of my interviews, they were like, okay, so what if you go unmatched? What are you going to do then? So what they want to hear is that you're going to continue doing research in the same specialty and then reapply, because that shows you how badly you want this. Other than that, LORs are the most important thing. They need to be from people who know you really well, and obviously I didn't see my LORs. I don't know what they're like, but in my interviews, I was told that they were really good LORs, that people highly recommended me. So those are things that are really important. That's what helps you stand out. Other than that, I think what helped me stand out a little bit more was I worked at a health tech startup. So I had a little bit of that experience in Pakistan, actually. So a lot, like basically every interview they asked me about that. They're like, oh, you created this app. Like it was like women's health. It was like the Flow app. So everyone was super interested in that. And because that was something very unique and that just happened, I didn't plan it. So if you try to do something different, they will acknowledge that and they will appreciate that, even if it's not medicine, like Neha said. Whatever it is, if it helps you stand out, you should include it. One of my co-interns actually was telling me that she told me that she had done ballet for 12 years and she participated professionally, and that's something that stood out to the programs for her. So I think whatever it is, like, you should include it in your application, even if it's not medicine, because they're going to remember you using that experience. And if you guys have any other questions, I think I'm just trying to keep it as brief as possible. You can reach out to me, you can email me, whatever it is. I'd be more than happy to help. I really want more people from Pakistan to at least attempt this. And it would be really nice to have more Pakistani OBGYNs, because there are not that many in the US. Like even IMGs, non-IMGs, it doesn't matter. Like we just don't have enough. So if anyone is interested at all, I would be happy, more than happy to open any doors for you guys, help you as much as I can. Just contact me. And I'll leave my email address. Thank you.
Okay, so family medicine. I'm also going to try to keep it really brief because I think we've gone on very long. I want to clear a few misconceptions about family medicine. Firstly, a lot of people kind of think that it's just very similar to internal medicine or like a backup to internal medicine. The truth is it's quite different. And the residency is a lot broader than internal medicine. So there's a lot more that you do. Depending on opinion, some people think it's even more difficult or not. So what makes it different? Family medicine, you rotate in inpatient medicine and outpatient medicine, but you also do a lot of experience in OB. You also do a lot of peds, inpatient and outpatient. You also work in surgery, you also work in psych, you also work in sports medicine. So there's a lot that you're doing during residency. So by the end of residency, what makes it different from internal medicine is that you cannot go into medicine subspecialty fellowships like cardio, nephro, gastro, but you can do outpatient medicine, you can do private practice, you can do hospitalist medicine right out of residency. So those are the similarities. So if you are unsure what specialty you want, which is what I felt for a very long time, I liked medicine, I didn't love it. I thought internal medicine for the rest of my life would be very boring. I really, really liked OBGYN, but I thought it was difficult. I didn't want my entire life to just be that. Lifestyle is difficult. I like surgery, but I didn't want my whole life to be that. So I just wasn't sure what exactly I wanted. So family medicine is an excellent choice for those of you who kind of like a bit of everything, want a bit of variety in your life, because that's what family medicine allows you. It's also extremely versatile. So after residency, you can go into outpatient or hospitalist, but you can also specialize in multiple things. You can do OB fellowship and you can just specialize in OB. You can do a women's health track and just work for women's health, which is something that I talked about a lot in my interviews because that's where my passions are. You can do sports medicine, you can do obesity medicine, you can do lifestyle medicine, sleep medicine. Some of these things I hadn't even heard of before until I interviewed, because they're constantly changing, and it's really good because there's a huge demand for family in the US right now. So that brings me to whether it's IMG friendly or not. I say yes and no. No, in the sense that majority of family medicine programs in the US do not sponsor visas. So a lot of them aren't really options for us, but a lot of them that do sponsor visas are very willing to take IMGs. I got more interviews than I was expecting, even from places I hadn't reached out to. So that goes to prove that they are interested in IMGs. Something to keep in mind is opposed versus unopposed programs. What that means is that opposed programs are those where family medicine is one of the specialties at the hospital that will be seen at most academic and university programs, where as a family physician, you will be doing outpatient family medicine, but you'll also be rotating in different departments with the residents of those departments. In unopposed programs, family medicine is the only residency in that entire hospital. So you are the main resident in every department. So that's the kind of program I wanted to go to. I thought that will give me the best experience. That's where I did my elective, and that's where I ultimately matched. Because when I, as a family medicine resident, rotate in OB, I am the main resident there. I'm handling every OB patient on the floor. I'm not competing, but I'm rotating at surgery. I'm not competing with any surgery residents to get certain cases. I'm getting all the cases. So that's something to keep in mind when you ultimately apply, and also just to keep in mind when you're thinking about what specialty you want. Career opportunities, I already went over. There's so many different specializations or do afterwards. How to build a CV. Everyone has talked about scores. Scores are important. Are they the most important thing in the world? Yes and no, depending on where you want to go. Ultimately, I wouldn't say scores are the most important thing in the world. What family medicine really, really values is your commitment to family medicine. They value clinical experience. They value volunteer work. They value whether you actually care about people and communities and underserved populations. So just even working in Pakistan really matters. And I know that I mentioned this before, but a lot of people give very varying advice about house job. Some people say do it, some say don't, it'll waste your time, whatever. But every single program I interviewed at asked me about my house job and really, really valued the experience I was bringing, because the Pakistani medicine experience is completely different than what any American is ever used to. They've never seen dengue, they've never seen malaria. So these kind of things that you bring to the table really make you stand out. So any clinical experience, obviously US clinical experience is superior, but anything you can get at any point in your career really matters. Anything outside of medicine, volunteer work, teaching at a low income school, volunteering with there's so many NGOs and charity work you can do in Pakistan. You can do things like a few days a week while you're studying for your steps also. So there's so much that you can do. And lastly, there's so much more to talk about all this. I'm just trying to really go through it quickly. If you're applying to multiple specialties, along with family medicine, you can apply to internal medicine, you can apply to OBGYN, you can apply to these all overlapping. I applied only to family medicine because I knew that I was really committed to that. But my letters I had 2 letters from family medicine physicians, but I had one from a medicine doctor, I had one from an OBGYN from the electives that I had done. So you can use multiple different specialties, but they all should talk about ultimately family medicine and what your actual goals are. So again, there's a lot more to talk about. If anyone is interested, please feel free to contact me. I'm just going to wrap up here so that everyone else can talk.
So, talking about general surgery, first of all, we need to decide if it is what you really want to do. It's a commitment. The pathway, the residency itself is longer than other residencies. For example, internal medicine is 3 years at most places, and general surgery ranges from 5 to 7 years. the pathway is definitely longer, and for IMG, that's sometimes even longer because you end up having to do a prelim year, even a couple of prelim years before you can end up in a categorical position. So it's definitely a commitment. So first of all, you need to decide if this is what you really want to do, because the lifestyle is going to be very different from what most people are used to. You're going to have long days and long nights. You're definitely going to have much less time for family, for your personal life, for a lot of things. You're going to have to delay a lot of decisions in your personal life just because you've chosen this field. So first of all, it's your commitment to the field. So once you've decided this is what you want to do, then as Abira spoke of, as Tuva spoke of, don't let anyone deter you from it. If I had a penny for how many times I've been told, oh, didn't you consider IM? Oh, didn't you consider psych? Even though these are definitely not less, like we assume that they're less competitive, but they're competitive in their own way, and your CV needs to be geared towards them long term. If my CV has been geared for surgery and I suddenly decide, oh, I'm going to do dual apply or I'm going to do IM instead, it's going to be difficult for me to match into those specialties as well. So once you've decided, you need to gear your entire CV towards this and focus on how to make it better. One thing I think, like Abira mentioned, is something that really stands out in your CV. What my personal statement and my CV communicated about my interests to the programs was that I'm very concerned about patient safety. I've done courses in patient safety from various universities. I did a master's in healthcare management just because I want to incorporate patient safety and hospital administration into my career in the future. So that's something in my application that has I feel that has sort of set me apart from other applicants. And I have worked towards making sure I can speak of it and sort of communicate why I chose this path to everyone I spoke to during my journey. So my personal statement spoke of it, and it's something that I talked about in all my interviews as well. Now, people often say you're not able to match into surgery if you haven't done a research year, if you haven't done a postdoc. I haven't done a research year and I haven't done a postdoc either. So people often reach out to me asking, how to go about postdocs. I wouldn't know because I haven't done it. It was in my plan to do. I was looking for postdoc positions. I hadn't planned to apply this cycle, but because of my observership, I got some feedback and they encouraged me to apply, which is why I ended up applying. If I hadn't applied this cycle, or if I had gone unmatched, that would most likely be my next step, trying to find a postdoc position. But you really can match without a postdoc, without a research year in the US. I do have a background in clinical research. I worked for about 9 months in clinical research and then the current 3 months in my current position. So I feel like, okay, that sort of communicated my long-term interest in research, but it doesn't have, like I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be research that's bench work, that's lab work, or that's generating publications all the time. It's just your commitment to what you've chosen for yourself. It doesn't have to be all over the place. Then I also I feel strongly that conferences are a great place to network. I'm not saying that postdocs are completely unnecessary. Some people, I'm sorry, I'm backtracking a little, but some people I know who matched directly into a categorical without doing a prelim had done a couple of years of postdocs and a master's. So these things definitely do play in your favor long term. If like I said, the cycle is definitely longer for you. It's gonna be a longer journey, but you're eventually gonna get there if you just decide on what your focus is and keep working towards it and keep adding experiences to show what your interest is in. Then attending conferences to network. Like I mentioned earlier, my conference really helped me. I was able to reconnect with my letter writers. I was able to reconnect with some of the residents I had rotated with during my observership, and I was also able to sort of make newer connections with the chair of the ASC and a couple of other people. So I feel like conferences are great if you know what you're doing. If you end up going there, spending all that money, going to a conference and standing in a corner because you don't know how to approach people and talk to them, then it's obviously better to not go. It's not going to be a great thing on your CV if you didn't really use that opportunity. But if you do attend conferences, use them massively to network, use them to meet people, approach everyone. My entire time at the conference, I was just looking at people's cards and ID cards and looking at what program they're from, what university they're from, and then, approaching them and talking to them and introducing myself. So use these opportunities wisely. People often ask me how I got my observership in general surgery. It was only cold emailing. There are some agencies that offer it, but they're often very expensive and they end up not being the best learning experience. In my opinion, it's cold emailing that works best. Cold emailing is different from mass emailing in the sense that you sort of draft your email towards the person you're emailing. It's definitely more extensive. It requires more effort, but I was emailing about 10 or 20 people every single day, and it did take a lot more effort because I was looking up each person, looking through their CVs, looking at their research interests, and then I wrote that email and sent it to them. But that sort of gets you a better response. Then sometimes people ask me, oh, what if their email addresses are not available on their websites? Again, it's just more effort. You sort of find what pattern that university follows. For example, Penn follows a first name dot last name at penmedicine.upenn.edu format. So I just plugged in everyone's names into that format, and I did get some delivery errors. It said, oh, not delivered, but oftentimes it did work. And that just maximizes your chances of landing something, because when these email addresses aren't publicly available, not a lot of people are reaching out to them. And that just sort of makes it more exclusive for you and increases your chances of getting a rotation this way. So like I mentioned, it might be a longer pathway for IMGs, because IMGs more often tend to land a preliminary position versus a categorical position. So what a preliminary position is, it's a 1-year position. I just matched into a preliminary position. So it's a 1-year position at UPenn. It's going to be a PGY 1 year. And following that, so some programs offer this and some don't, but some programs offer a 2nd year of prelim. I know UPenn does offer a 2nd year of prelim, but it doesn't keep on everyone for the 2nd prelim year. Prelim just means that the 2nd year is also going to be a 1 year. You're not guaranteed a PGY 3 after that. So you're doing a PGY 1 prelim, PGY 2 prelim, and then you don't know if you're going to be having a PGY 3 categorical. There's no PGY 3 prelim in most places. So I'm going to be reapplying this cycle because I landed a PGY 1 prelim. I'm going to be reapplying this cycle, but at the same time, I'm also going to be looking at PGY 2 categorical positions outside the match. If I don't end up matching in this coming cycle into a PGY 2 categorical position, then I do have the option of looking for it outside of the match, as well as looking at PGY 2 prelim positions outside the match. Once you do a PGY 2 prelim, for prelim positions, especially for us on a J visa, I'm sorry if this is getting a little long. I'm happy to do a separate session on this, but like just to clarify a lot of questions. When you're on a J visa, and most programs offer a J visa for surgery, when you're on a J visa, you need to show advancement in your career. So you can do a PGY 1 prelim, and then you can do a second PGY 1 prelim, but you can't do a PGY 1 prelim, a PGY 2 prelim, and then go back to a PGY 1 categorical position, but because that does not show advancement. This is a little technical, but someone asked, to explain how prelim versus categorical works. So these are your options once you land a prelim position. I'm happy to talk about it if someone wants to reach out. Then for categorical, categorical basically means that you've landed the entire residency, right? So most people match into IM categorical. So that just means that you've got all 3 years altogether. For general surgery, most community programs are 5 years of categorical, and most academic programs are 7 years of categorical with 2 years of research in between. So it's going to be PGY 1, 2, 3, and then 2 years of research, and then 6 and 7. It's like that. So yeah, so that's how it works. It's definitely a little longer if you choose this specialty. It's definitely more effort. It's definitely very less of a return you feel in the beginning. Like, you're putting so much effort, but you don't see a lot of things happening. But the main thing is, like, once you put your mind to it, just do it. All right. I feel like I'm a great example of a person who had a lot of red flags on their CV. I did not have a great step 1 score. Whatever you feel is a good step 1 score or a low step 1 score, just, think of 10, 20 points below that. That was my step 1. My step 2 was very, very average, sort of below average. And I'm also like for 4 years now outside of graduation. And I did not have any hands-on electives in general surgery. I only had 4 weeks of an observership in general surgery. So whatever you think are red flags on your CV, don't let them deter you. Don't let people tell you not to do it. A lot of Apna mentors laughed at me when I told them I want to pursue general surgery when I reached out to them. And, they were like, oh, why don't you consider psych? I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm literally talking to you about an observership in general surgery and you're telling me to do psych. So I don't know how that works out. Anyway, so just don't let anyone define your journey, and just be very sure about something once before starting it.